serve as president of the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance for Language and Vitality, and also the Martin Luther King Jr. Foundation of Alaska. I am black and I am a Baptist preacher, and so yeah, I guess said a few things in our past meeting on Thursday, what have you, but I do work from a space and a place of love for everybody. May not always agree with everything with everybody, but I love everybody. And so there may be times in these kinds of settings or even in our equity meetings where they might even seem to come across as confrontational to a degree, but that's only so that we can be of one accord in here, so we can confront whatever we need to confront outside of here. And just kind of giving you an idea of who I am in the space that I work from and I interact with. And so yeah, we move on.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Taylor Donovan.
I do have a mic though.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Taylor Donovan. And I grew up in Alaska. My family's originally from Southeast Alaska, so I'm both Tlingit and Unangan, which is actually from Southwest. But I grew up in Anchorage and then currently serve with Rural CAP with background in housing and homelessness.
Thank you.
Can you go and come back to me just quick?
Hi, my name is Marie Husa, and yes, member of the Filipino community, but I am here. I'm a member of a couple of Filipino organizations, Filipino American organizations, but I am here as a private citizen and happy to be here in below zero temperatures with you all and to see your faces. Thank you.
Yes.
Me? My name is Emerita Wag, and I've been here since 1974 from the Philippines, and so maybe I like it here because I have stayed that long. So, but anyhow, used to be president of the Alaska Federation of Filipino Americans, Inc. Yeah, so they cannot elect me anymore because I have
Termed out, yes.
That's my term. Or they said that I could rest for a year, but so anyhow, so I'm here and thank you for hopefully I would learn a lot about community and stuff, and really appreciate it. Thank you.
Excuse me, is that Emma Reader?
Emerita, or BB for sure.
BB?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? I'm sorry. So in order to use these monitors, I think one of you will have to sign in right here. Is that so when you can do that?
I don't know my last
I can wait just in case. Because right now they can't see
Oh,
us,
I left
right?
it, might be a
Yeah, okay.
Oh no!
So it's frozen.
Not a good night for that.
It's
Yeah.
not funny.
Hopefully it comes back.
I don't know what happens to computers at below 20. Nothing
Cameron, I
good.
don't want to make you nervous, but I did that once and the whole screen was ruined.
Is that right?
no.
It, like, the pixels froze. I think.
Oh.
Something happened and it was bad.
Oh no.
Froze my computer,
Oh.
like left it in the car.
Oh,
Apple
wow.
needs to make an Arctic computer.
The Arctic Mac.
That's right.
Sounds good.
Are we moving on, or are we waiting for?
Waiting for them to come on, I guess, so maybe they can hear us.
Couldn't see us, yeah.
Ah, that's promising. Although, maybe the screen.
And while we are waiting, I was gonna say, while we're waiting for that, maybe we'll have a volunteer get ready to do the land and labor acknowledgement.
I can do that. I'll be ready.
site meeting.
It should be good. Okay, it should be good to go.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Alrighty, can you guys online hear us?
You'll just have to move the mouse every once in a while because it will lock.
Yeah, I can do it.
Awesome, awesome. We're doing introductions around the room, and we kind of started a little bit before we got the monitors on and working, but we're gonna continue now. Ms. Lori.
Hi, I'm Lori Pickett, and I'm here with Alaska Literacy Program, and I've been at Alaska Literacy Program for about, 28 years now, and we do a lot to serve the immigrant community and adults that are working on improving their reading skills. And it's been really meaningful work to me. I've also had the privilege to be welcomed into an Alaska Native family through marriage and have had the opportunity to visit some very rural communities and really learn a lot from my family. And I'm really grateful for what Alaska has brought to me, and I do this work to try to find ways to make it more equitable for everybody based on what I've seen. So thank you.
Good.
Okay. Hi everyone, Felix Rivera, Anchorage Assembly representing Midtown. First got elected in 2017 and we have term limits here, so I am going to be done in 2026, and so very excited to work with this committee to see how much we can get done before I'm officially off the body. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cameron Perez-Verdia. I serve on the Anchorage Assembly, also representing the West Side. I'm in my 5th year, I believe, on the Assembly, or something close to that. My day job is I'm the president and CEO of the Alaska Humanities Forum, and I'm originally from Iqaluit up in Barrow, but my tribal heritage is actually Lakota, so I'm sort of a strange, and my last name is Mexican because my wife is Mexican, so I'm sort of a strange mix of things in terms of names and me. I just wanted to say that I am, I have a lot of hope for this group, this work, and my hope is that we both are using this platform as a way to inform people and to bring in lots of voices and to really engage the community. But also, I'm particularly interested in looking at systemic change and looking at policies and looking at increasing our access to really good data, so we understand what's going on in the city, we understand what's going on with the municipality, and that we use that information to actually shift systems that are perpetuating the kind of oppression that I think most of us want to see change. So that's the thing that I'm most interested in, is to begin to use this as a way to begin to shift many of the embedded systems that we have in the city to benefit the people who live here. So, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Let me say this, let me preface our next committee member. You guys recall on this week, Candace Bell resigned from the committee, and she recommended Mr. Tom Pittman here, and so he's here, live and in the flesh. So, yeah.
Thank you for that introduction. I'm not sure if I'm... There we go. Thank you very much for the introduction. Do you prefer pastor or reverend?
Just don't call me late for breakfast.
Easy enough, thank you. I'm hearing some of those introductions, and I'm sure that we'll be able to have a chance to hear from online as well. Humbled to be a part of this committee, especially with some of what was mentioned on what we're hoping to accomplish. That sounds wonderful. If we can even move the needle a little bit on some of that systemic change and policy change, it'll be well worth all of our time. So I'm also Tlingit. I'm from Southeast Alaska, born and raised Alaskan, born in Juneau, and my family moved here to South Central Alaska when I was in middle school, went to Gruning and then Chugiak. Went down south for school, and in my professional life bounced back and forth from different places in the lower 48 and coming back home. But have been back home for about a year now and am the new executive director for Identity, which is a statewide a statewide LGBTQ organization. But our offices and our clinic is located here in Anchorage. We are undergoing an expansion right now, so I'll get the word out when we're going to do our grand reopening. We're seeing patients amongst the chaos, but we will have twice the square footage here pretty soon, so it'll be wonderful. We're working with the city. We have a grant to help get STI testing out into the community. So we're really excited for some of that work and hoping to showcase some of that when we do our grand reopening. Yeah, I'm most comfortable with he, him pronouns. I really appreciate what you said, Pastor May. I think what you said is important when there's a diverse group coming together. The way that I try and look at work like this is it's not about, if I'm thinking about getting to a destination, it's not necessarily about getting in my car and deciding the route, but more like a bus. And so long as we're heading in the general direction and we're aligned, then we should continue on the route together. And when our beliefs might bring us in different directions, that's when we respectfully hop off that bus and find a new one. But to me, it seems like with what you had mentioned, we are towards the same destination. And so I'm excited to be on this bus with you and to start moving in that direction. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate
Pastor
that.
May, can I do mine before? Sorry,
Yes.
I just had to not do.
You universally known.
Oh. Good morning, everyone. I'm Thea Agnew-Benben. Really happy to be here. It's our second annual January work session. Very exciting. I'm one of the co-chairs of this committee with Pastor May. And I also lived here in Anchorage on Denali land since I was 6 months old, so 1973 we moved here. And in my adult life, I've lived, most of my 20s lived out in the Copper Basin in a really small place called McCarthy. And also have worked in communities all around the state. And for a long time, mostly worked with Alaska Native communities, and then have more recently really worked more statewide and also more here in Anchorage. And the work that I do focuses on community development, but really in the areas of health and human services and individual and community well-being, and addressing the systemic inequities in our communities is something I've just worked on for the whole time I've been doing that, because that's we can't be healthy and well until we're all healthy and well. So addressing the history in our communities is a really important part of that to me, and then also not getting stuck in kind of guilt and shame about that, but deciding how do we get on the bus together and move it forward. So that's what I'm here to do, and I'm super happy and privileged to be a part of this group.
And we'll say more about those kinds of things a little later. Asher.
Hey guys, this is Asher Harley here. I'm here representing Temple Congregation Beth Shalom. I guess a little bit about me is I've been in Anchorage for I think about 23, 24 years now. I grew up in the Bay Area in California and moved up here in 2001. I also, this is my 19th year teaching at either Bartlett High School or Baggage Middle School. I lived on the east side for about 16 years. I'm here representing the congregation, but I've always had an interest. I think I taught history for a long time, and when you teach history, you can't help but start asking questions about power and rights and the way that human beings have treated each other throughout history, and the way we have looked at differences and found ways to, just the history of power has always just been kind of fascinating for me, and recognizing what that does to marginalized communities and the impact that history has played in our society today. I teach a class currently at Bartlett called Dignity and Diversity, and Bartlett being one of the most diverse, schools in the country. It is fascinating. I throw some information out and my students talk about it and we learn. I don't have answers, but when you hear 25 different perspectives from some of the most diverse, groups of people, you can't help but learn and start to come to some understandings of what we all have in common and how we can move forward. I would, similar to what Assemblyman Perez said, how can we begin to move the needle? I've always been fascinated in politics and policy and making change, and this group has kind of been my first in and be like, okay, how do we start, making policy that actually can have significant change? So it's good to be a part of the group.
Thank you, Asher. Joan?
Sorry, this is Joan. I'm outside. Can someone come and open the door for me?
Got you covered.
Thank you.
Yeah, should have hit my phone. Yeah.
I have too much stuff on my hands.
Oh, wow, sorry about that. Via's on the way.
The bigger.
Alrighty.
She joined the whole
She didn't see my sign.
So we'll come back to you. Pamela?
Good morning. My name is Panna Lynch-Jerusi. I am working with this committee remote to be socially responsible because I have a cold and don't want to share it. I have lived in Alaska for half a century. I work for the Anchorage School District, but in no means represent them in the committee. I am now officially a doctoral candidate at Purdue University, and it's been a wonderful journey. And my focus brought me to intensify my relationship with this committee because I am about advocacy for adolescent mental health disparities within the Anchorage goal at the community level with a prevention model. So I appreciate being accepted into this body and to working with you, and plan even after degree conferred to continue some proactive work for the population that I serve as a high school nurse at Robert Service High School and in addressing disparities in adolescent mental health care delivery. Thank you, and I look forward to moving forward.
All right, thank you, Miss Pamela, for that. Heather?
Hi, I'm Heather Ireland. I'm the Executive Director of Anchorage School-Based Health Centers, and I've been in this position for about 10 years, during which time we grew from both serving Clark and Baggage to adding East and Bartlett, and then we also do some pop-up clinics. The intent is to give students access to both medical and mental health services, and we partner with various providers in the community for the mental health piece. But on the medical side, we work closely with the Anchorage School District nurses. And, just to give you an example, we saw a student last week that had a pretty bad ear infection, and had we not seen that student, they would not have gotten treatment for that. And then we also do a lot of physical exams, and I was working on my United Way grant report and was talking with one of the administrative assistants who helps process all the paperwork for the sports, and they said since we've been partnering with them, their sports involvement has gone up, and then in turn their attendance has gone up, and you just see those benefits for those kids, and I think that it should be available for everyone to be able to both access healthcare and then participate fully in their education.
Well said.
Thank you. Taffy?
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Tafi Salnoa. I am one of Nava Pronouns are Stuma, she and her. I'm on my way to church, but I will be on this meeting. So don't tell my parents that I'm on the meeting. But I've been living in Alaska for 20 years. And this year marks actually the year that I've lived in Alaska, in Anchorage, longer than Samoa. So I turned 40 this year, and my day-time job is I work as the director of the Pacific Community of Alaska, an organization serving Native Hawaiians, Islanders, health and wellness and mental health and wellness. We are studying programming to also include a youth program. So excited about the work that we're doing in this committee for a while, and equity is my jam. So, and that's the reason why I'm here. So look forward to working alongside it.
Thank you, Taffy, and I think maybe we've gotten everyone that's online as well. And so thank you so much for representing who you are and what you bring to the committee and all of that. And I'm so thankful and glad and appreciative that you guys kind of, to a degree. Joe, you want to talk to us? Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Joan Ryan. There we go. I have two last names, Ryan and Estee, without a hyphen. And Taffy, I'm also turning 40 this year. So I wear a lot of different hats. I come here with Enlaces. I'm the board president, which is a Latino Hispanic organization, and we focus on different programs, which are culture, health and wellness, education, and civic engagement, and culture, if I can say. And we're growing pretty fast, so we're hiring this year a director of programs. So if you know anyone that is bilingual, let me know. Then that's a volunteer job, and then my actual job is with the state of Alaska. I'm a program coordinator for the Anchorage area for the Healthy and Equitable Communities Unit. And I also work part-time I'm an adjunct faculty member for the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and I teach 300 level Spanish classes. And I'm here because I believe that together we can actually accomplish a lot, and I'm very glad that I could make it live today. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. And let me say, Joan and Lucy Hanson were two keynote speakers for our MLK Foundation commemoration celebration on the other Sunday, and so wonderful job. Yeah. And but as I was saying a minute ago, I'm appreciative and thankful that you guys kind of followed the lead that I gave, because I think it's important when we come to work like this that we kind of know who each of us are and the background from which we come and the vantage point from which we approach this work. I think that's meaningful, and part of that will come up again throughout our discourse on today, throughout the agenda. But I just kind of thought I'd give a lead in going forward, so we would get that. And I'm thankful that you guys didn't just give a name and say, here's where I work, and kind of told us a little bit about yourselves. Because I've learned across the years that many times folks say, well, I don't interact because I don't know you, kind of thing. And the more that we know about each other, it's important, certainly in this kind of work. But I love you whether I know you or not, you know, but everybody's not kind of like that. And so I'm appreciative of all the vantage points from which each of you come and what you bring to the table. It's going to be helpful and hopeful to all of us. And so thank you so much, Taylor.
Okay, good morning, folks. We acknowledge that the land that now makes up the United States of America was the traditional home, hunting ground, trade exchange point, and migration route of more than 574 American Indian and Alaska Native federally recognized tribes, and that many more tribal nations that are not federally recognized or no longer exist. We recognize the cruel legacy of slavery and colonialism in our nation and acknowledge the people whose labor was exploited for generations to help establish the economy of the United States. We honor Indigenous, enslaved, and immigrant peoples' resilience, labor, and stewardship of the land, and commit to creating a future founded on respect, justice, and inclusion for all people as we work to heal the deepest generational wounds. We're currently on Dena'ina land, so my favorite month of the year is January in the Dena'ina language. That's because it means the month to go about singing to our neighbors. I think especially when it's this cold, it's important to remember the community that we're in and how to further that community.
All right. Thank you so much. And agenda-wise, we have new business, and as you know, review is in order as it relates to our annual plan, 2023, reviewing that plan and priorities and selecting and making new priorities for 2024, and then identifying activities to address the priorities. As it relates to our 2023 annual plan, I trust that you guys have had an opportunity to kind of look over those in prep for today's meeting and what have you, and to look at those and come up with a new plan for 2024. I think identifying the activities to address the priorities, I think those things will kind of come up as we go further into our agenda, and thinking in terms of reviewing and revising if needed the guiding principles and helpful pointers. Have something.
I don't want to interrupt you, but when you're done.
And helpful pointers and what have you. I think that would fall into the priorities as it relates to the annual plan as well. Go ahead, Peter.
Would it be okay if I just did a kind of quick contextual, like,
Sure.
where did this come from for people like
You're facilitated by nature.
Not everybody was here, so I just want to give a little bit of background. So this committee really formally came into being in its current state in October 2022. And prior to that, many of the folks actually on this committee were part of a vaccine allocation committee during COVID that the health department used to really make sure that we were equitably distributing vaccines. And then also a bunch of people around here really stood up clinics and did a whole lot of work to make sure that all the different communities in Anchorage were getting access and education. And so after that kind of ended, we reformed in this format, and it took us most of 2022 to get to October, where we formally became an assembly committee. And so then, because this mandate is so broad, we thought it would be a good idea to sit down together like we're doing today. So last January, we sat down together and came up with this plan. And the plan is still pretty broad, but we have, like, the first section is really kind of our guiding principles. I won't read through all those, but I think it has some really good quotes in here. Maybe I'll just read those because I really like them. Pastor May, I think, gave a really practical and helpful definition of equity. We have a committee charter, which, Tom, I don't know if you've seen that.
I don't think I have.
Okay, we'll make sure you have that. But it actually has quite a bit of information about what we mean by equity in there. But I really like Pastor May's description or definition, which is equal opportunity predicated on equal resources. So when we know that everyone who lives here has the same level of opportunity and the same access to resources, then our job will be done. So, and then I also really like what Lori said, which is this is a place to share stories that has power. So, we want to have a place where we all can come together and kind of share experiences, but then this body does have power. We don't quite know what our power is. We haven't really fully explored and embodied that yet, but that's part of our job probably today. And then the second part is really around how we'll engage. And we've come up with a number of different ways. I wouldn't say that we've really moved on some of these. So we might want to look at that at some point today and just think about that. And then the priorities of the annual plan really fall into kind of these three big buckets. One is embedding equity in municipal plans, processes, and resources. And actually the first one under that came up at our meeting on Thursday, which is how do we make public testimony welcoming? It's a really rough environment in there at assembly meetings, and so how do we actually make it that people can can come. Another one is around the chief equity officer. Junior does come to our meetings pretty regularly, but I wouldn't say we've really optimized that role yet. And then there's a number of other things under that bucket. The second one is really around meeting basic needs, because as we know, there are really intense disparities when it comes to income, access to housing, access to food, education, employment, and the ability to build generational wealth. So that's a really important piece for us, is meeting basic needs and really working towards safety and health and well-being for all of us. The third one, which is also a really important piece of that, is really equitable education opportunities. And so those are kind of our three big buckets. And then we did come up with activities, and again, we should go through this together and see, are these still the activities we want to do? Do we want to add any? And D under that item were things that we sort of put off, to the future. So those might be areas of particular interest. So, that was just a little rundown of what we have so far. Back to you, Pastor Dean.
Well, I was gonna say, if you can't facilitate, that'd be fine, because, you were type and take notes, okay. All right. Well, we thank you for the overview, and there again, I'll illustrate our leadership styles are a little quite different, because I was gonna go top down and go through all of this, and she wanted to give you the overview, and so, which is great. And I love her facilitation skills in that regard. But anyway, we'll get on with the work at hand as it relates to, I think we'll just start with a review and revise if needed, the guiding principles and helpful pointers, because that will lead us into our priorities and annual plan for 2024. And making identification of those, just going down through it. And so the guiding principles and helpful pointers that were established in 2023, as they alluded to, A, working to ensure equity, which means equal opportunity predicated on equal resources, which you stated. The committee's purpose simply stated, the Assembly's role is to set policy and allocate resources. And this committee helps guide those decisions to build equity in Anchorage. And C, the committee is a resource for the Assembly, its committees, and the administration that can be consulted about ideas, projects, issues. The committee can also bring our ideas and issues and projects to those bodies. The committee provides a space for communication, connection, learning, and for voices to be heard. The committee is a place to share stories that has power there again. But in going through those, I guess my initial thought about these, just for me, and then we'll hear your ideas as well, is I think after about a year and a half or so, going toward the 2-year mark, I think for me personally, we need to really be about doing the work of the committee and doing what we can to effectuate change in those areas that we see change is needed. I think what we've done thus far has been beneficial in as much as we've done what we've done. But I guess we've done a little bit, in my estimation, a little bit of babysitting, a little bit of paperwork, a little bit of this, that, and the other, without really diving and delving into those areas and things that we need to be about as an equity committee of the Assembly. And so that's kind of my take on it. It's stated that the role of the Assembly, and we're kind of aware of that, is to set policy and to allocate resources. But our big deal is to find a place in the policy setting and the allocation of these resources. How do we interact with the Assembly as a whole, as it relates to their boards and all of that, their committees, which we'll get to some of that later, but how do we interface with them as policy is being set, as resources are being allocated? How do we get in the fit in as it relates to the change we'd like to see, and how the policies are are coming about and are made, how the resources are allocated, and that kind of thing. And I think those are places that we need to have an inroads into. And so that's just on that initial part, that's kind of my thinking on it. What say ye? Yes.
Hannah has her hand up too.
Okay.
Let her go first.
Yeah, watch that for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to have her go first?
All righty. Who do we have?
Yeah.
Okay, panel.
Good morning. To follow exactly the path you're on, Pastor May, my brain operates in nursing mode. So the part B, this committee helps guide those decisions to build equity in Anchorage. I would like some direction or advice from our assembly representatives on what that looks like. A cookbook, what does that look like? Help guide, that's a nice word, but I would like real specifics on what that looks like. Step 1, step 2, step 3, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense, certainly to me, and we'll allow them an opportunity to do that because that was one of the questions that I starred on and wrote out is also how do we receive, acquire, effectuate the policy and resource allocation information prior to decisions being made by the assembly and or the administration. And so I'm just piggybacking on what you're saying, Pamela. So we'll allow space for that.
I'm not sure I have an answer for that question. I think that what I'm going to say may help to frame the conversation so we can get there. And so for me, I think that partly what you shared, Reverend, is what is the role of this committee and how does it fit within the sort of system that we're in? I think I'd like to speak to that a bit. And I'd like to also speak to the environment or the situation we're in, which changes whenever there's a new mayor or a new assembly member. The sort of the environment changes, and so I think this committee should have a clear grounding in who it is, what its purpose is, what its functions, regardless of that. Regardless of who's in the mayor's seat, regardless of who's in these seats. So I will just say that I think that the assembly and the administration need a body of people that represent the very diverse viewpoints and experiences of Anchorage, and need that body to come forth with ideas, recommendations, demands, whatever in whatever form. And so partly I think it's the job of this group to figure out what some of those priorities are so that it doesn't go too broad, and spend the energy to come to a place of making very clear recommendations. And also, I think that it is also a body that when people in the administration or in the assembly are looking to take action on things, move policies forward, allocate resources, that this can be a body that provides guidance and advice and feedback in those cases. So I think that role I think is really, really important, both in terms of what this committee is asking the administration or the assembly to do, and also a role in providing communication and advice and all of that. I would just say that I think that when the equity officer position was created and when all of that work happened, there was a real belief at that point that office and that person would do a lion's share of the work to collect data, build systems, all of that. And that has not happened at all, and won't happen while this mayor is in office. And so that changes the role of this group a bit, right? Because if the administration is not willing to do that work, then how does the work get done? My hope is that there will be an administration in the future that will be willing to actually do that work. And so the role of this committee may need to change at that point to be able to work with that. But the real work of gathering the data and identifying specifically where action should be taken to improve things and moving forward those policies. That's not going to happen with this administration. So I think that's why that role comes back to this committee and maybe the assembly to do that work. So I guess I would just end by saying I don't necessarily, I know the answer to the question that was asked, but I think the piece that I find is that we're not alone in this. There are cities all over the country that are trying to wrestle with this. There are many places that are much further along than we are. I think it would really benefit this group to look at what others are doing, potentially even fly someone up who can work with us or give us some idea of what's possible if a group like this were to actually develop a framework, develop clear sort of focus areas. So I think that would be one recommendation is to get that. And the last thing I'll say, and I'll stop talking, is that as much as I love the fact that this group tackles so many things, I think that's one of the biggest challenges, and that's one of the things I hope for today, is that the difficult choice of saying we're not going to do all of those things. We're going to do 3 things. We're going to go two things for a year. We're going to focus in on a few things. I think that would really create a lot of energy here, because then I think you'd be able to see progress and shifting, as opposed to this very wide-ranging piece, which feels good because it's very inclusive. Everybody gets a chance to have their priorities involved. But I think we lose steam and we lose people coming because it just doesn't feel like it moves. So I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you for that, and I see you, Felix, and we'll get to that. And you spoke to something a minute ago that is on my plate as well, as far as narrowing down our focus to a couple of things that we're going to hone in on, and so I'm in agreement with that aspect of it. We'll hear Felix, and then I have a follow-up question.
Great, yeah, and thanks for that question, Hannah. So, when we were reviewing this earlier in the meeting, certainly that word guide jumped out at me, because to me that is a very active word, versus other words like advice or feedback. I think those are more passive words, in my opinion. And the assembly is any assembly, any elected body is a very opinionated body, right? That can have different reactions to guidance. I think we've all seen it. I think in context, the way that I have been thinking about this committee and guidance and other committees, I'm just sort of putting my hat on as the chair of the Housing and Homelessness Committee. And in the Housing and Homelessness Committee, we talk about a lot of different things in that committee, and we provide guidance to the Assembly on a lot of different things. And sometimes that guidance will take the form of policy guidance in the form of a resolution. It might take the form of some code changes that I agree for. It might take the form of an appropriation that's brought forward by members of the committee. And the Assembly will either take it or they won't, right? In fact, we just, not that long ago, saw the Assembly say, long story short, thank you but no thank you, to a recommendation that a naming panel made about renaming the Port of Alaska. And that's just how we function. We will take some things, we won't take other things. It might not look exactly the same way that you envisioned it by the time it gets to us. But I think at least this committee is an avenue to provide what you think should be done in a variety of forms that sort of we as an assembly take.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Felix. And now we revert back to Panna. Panna, did your question get sufficiently answered, or do you have follow-up before I delve any further?
It absolutely was answered. Thank you, gentlemen assembly. It gives me food for thought. What you present to me, I see as ingredients. So how we put those ingredients together can be powerful. And thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pamela. And now for my follow-up question to the question that I raised initially, I do think things change when you get different administrations in and assembly members come in and out and all of that kind of thing. But I do think this committee can be effective regardless of who's sitting in the administrative seat and on the assembly if we target things that we need to target. So I guess what I'm asking again is how do we either request or acquire policy or resource allocation information prior to the decisions being made so that we have an opportunity to weigh in on how it affects the broader community and equity-wise. And that input could be given prior to the decisions being made. How do we interface in that way?
I'll start if there's me to add, and just a very practical thing is that I think one of the roles that Felix and I play here is to the committee itself. It's typically what would happen is we would bring the resolution forward, right? So we would bring the request to ask whatever it is forward from this committee. So the committee would deliberate and work on a recommendation for policy change, recommendation for allocation of funding, recommendation for whatever it wants to see happen, and likely we would bring this forward for consideration by the assembly. And I think there may be some benefit in doing a little bit of training. We can even have our team, our legislative team, do some training in terms of what that process looks like, and so that everyone in this committee feels really sort of clear about what are the steps involved and what are the things that would need to happen. But as Felix said, absolutely, that's the role of these committees is to look at what the greatest needs are, look at what needs to change, what needs to happen, and bring those forward to the assembly for consideration and for a vote. And so that's where it turns from the work of the assembly to actually being done. So, Felix, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think one of the difficult things sometimes about the assembly process is that sometimes an issue will come up that some assembly members are working on, and we have the rule of three, where 3 assembly members can work on something in private before they bring it to the public, and sometimes this huge issue will come before us, and that we're all sort of surprised about, and 2 to 4 to 6 weeks later, we're voting on this really big issue. And with the confines of this committee, how is this committee going to provide feedback on such a huge issue if it's only 2, 4, 6 weeks, right? So it is somewhat difficult in that avenue. But I think generally, as much as possible, we try to take specific actions either to the committee that is most related to them, or we have a specific work session. So, it may, I don't know how this will work, but it may be something that if this committee wants to opine on a specific ordinance and it's set for a work session, and that's the only opportunity you have because you don't have a meeting prior to us voting on it, there may be some avenue to have your voice injected in that kind of way, but that's something that we would have to take to the chair.
Okay, and Thea's next, and then we'll get Joan. But let me piggyback on that just a second briefly, and that is this: the process may be abbreviated and all of that, but I think awareness is needed, in any regard relative to what's coming down the pike. And if it rises to the level of, hey, we need to weigh in on this, we might have to call something special. But I do have a question. Outside of you two guys, what is the respect level or need level, if any, from the other assembly members as you know it for the work that this particular committee does?
I think it's still relatively unknown. I think that the majority of the assembly and probably the administration and probably the community is not fully aware of that this committee exists, what the purpose of the committee is, what the priorities of this committee are, and so I think it's still early. But so I don't think I could speak to how they feel about this committee or what their thoughts are. But I do think that there's a lack of understanding and an awareness about this committee. And I would just add that I think the process we're going to go through today, where identifying clear priorities and working on those priorities and seeing shifts happen is going to be a big step towards people understanding the role of this. And just as long as I got the mic real quick, I think partly it's these two things, right? Felix is talking about this committee weighing in on things, which is really going to be challenging because things move quickly. It's really, I think there are things that I think Felix and I should consider ourselves responsible for, keeping an eye on things that fit within the priorities of this committee and trying our best to make sure that they're brought forth to this committee to the degree that we can. That's hard because there's a lot of things, and equity sort of spans a lot of things that we're involved in. So there's the reactive stuff of what this committee is responding to or that sort of thing. But then there's the work of this committee. And I think that is where we're going to really see some ground or some gaining ground, because if that's going to be where this committee brings things forward, this committee does the work of making clear change recommendations, and I think that's where we're going to see this committee become more of, people will be more aware of it and have a greater understanding of what it is and why it's important.
Yeah, so I'm happy to provide somewhat of a blunt response, but I'm not going to name any names. So I have talked to some assembly members about this committee, and there are some members who have a neutral opinion because they don't really know what this committee does, and they don't really, in their opinion, really see outcomes of this committee. And then I have talked to some assembly members who have somewhat of a negative view of this committee because it takes staffing resources and they don't see any outcomes.
Okay, and I do have follow-up, but I'm not going to usurp Ms. Thea, then we get Joe. Thanks for pulling that out.
So I just want to ground the discussion we're right now and what's actually happened in the last year. So we meet monthly. We've had a couple special meetings, especially when assembly members have brought things to the committee that need attention. I think we've had pretty good attendance. So I don't think it's the case that attendance is dropping off or anything like that. I think we've had pretty good attendance. Felix in particular, I think you've been a really helpful, and I think in the beginning you gave us a lot of actually training and guidance around the process, and then you've just been a very helpful and steady participant with this committee. I think this is a different model, obviously. This is the only committee that is made up of community members. And even though for assembly members, for some of you, being an assembly member is not your full-time job, we're all coming in volunteers. So it's a different makeup. And I think it's a good question to ask, the question around outcomes. Like what outcomes are reasonable and valued by the group? Because what I've seen happen over the last year, I guess, are a couple different things. One, assembly members bring things to this committee kind of pell-mell. Like we've ended up talking about, to me, somewhat random resolutions. Because of course anything kind of fits under the banner of equity. We've had discussions that are focused around cultural, celebrations or recognitions. I think that's a question for us. Is that core to our work? of course, culture is extremely important, but if our goal is, I guess it just depends what our goal is. Like, is our goal to, change structural inequity? If that's our goal, we gotta figure out what the right activities are to get there. So I think so far, because we're all trying to kind of figure it out as we go, I guess I don't want there to be any feeling right now that we haven't done our job or that we're, kind of feeling some way. That's not the feeling I get. I feel like we are building our skills and our competency and our focus as a group, and that is not going to be a quick process because we meet basically once a month. Everybody's doing a lot of good work. So I think that's one thing. As assembly members, I think if we can give more clarity to them about what we want to deliberate on, that will help us be more effective with our time. But then on the flip side, I think the other thing we've done a really good job at is actually, this is a body that can kind of quickly learn things and then get that information back out again. And I feel like that is something we're really doing. We've learned a lot about what's going on with housing and homelessness. We've tried to really push on a language audit. So we've learned a lot, and I think share that information back out, as well as sharing information between the members. So, and that's a powerful thing. I mean, that's building a network. That's how we build a movement, is by really developing those relationships. So, I'm not saying that I don't want outcomes or I don't want action or I don't want to focus. I'm not saying that, but I just want to kind of caution ourselves about what it really takes to build an effective movement. And it's, all of us have been doing it for a long time. It's a long-term process, and the relationship building is a really important piece of it. So, and to hear that some of the assembly members aren't, kind of seeing the value of the committee, that's good information. We should decide what we want to do about that. Does that mean we should interact in a different way, or be, present to them, or just be more clear? And that's something I think we could certainly get to. So.
Yeah, that's kind of why I broached the question. And just piggybacking, and I'm coming, Joan and then Heather, just kind of piggybacking on that. I like, we're kind of a good cop, bad cop team, so to speak.
Maybe the bad
I'm the bad cop. The process is necessary. The process is necessary and all that, and I know it's time consuming, but I am more outcome oriented. I can work in the process, but I want outcomes, so to speak. And Joe.
Thank you. I was just, when Cameron was talking about, the ordinances and the structure of the municipality. So I just wanted to maybe suggest, it's like when you get into a new board, right? You get like a little package where we can get, for example, the structure of the municipality, right? Mayor, all the other people and assembly members, and then the committees, and what do committees do? And also maybe there's a lot of people that don't know what an ordinance is or what a resolution is. Having definitions in place for maybe new or actual members to understand what those things mean, And I do believe that structure helps. I'm a very structured person, and maybe having those things, there, so we can actually see who is who, what things mean, and the processes. Because as Tia said, we're all volunteers here, and we do not, well, maybe not all of us, but maybe we do not know how things work. So I think that will be very helpful for the members and new members as well, to have just a little sketch where we can see, okay, Felix and Cameron are the liaisons of this committee. Who are the other assembly members from other committees? And then how other structures work. So phone numbers or whatever we need to know, so we understand where we're at and the process. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out. The other thing is, and I don't know if all the committees are the same, but I used to be part of the women's committee.
Commission.
Yeah. And one of the things that they have was that they will make recommendations to the mayor and the assembly. That when I was there happened a few times, but it's a committee that, in my opinion, was not taken very serious. So what do we do, like as the equity committee? What do we give recommendations? What do we do for the assembly and the mayor? So just having things very clear or structured, so we know what exactly are doing here.
Yes, thank you, Joan. And I think that's very important and necessary as well, because I had to go through a process myself with figuring out all of these terminologies that are used relative to the ordinances and the resolutions and the AIMs and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm like, what, you know, and kind of go through that. And so it'd be helpful to have that, you know, so that you can look at it and say, okay, this is that kind of thing.
Yeah, and also it will make it faster and easier when assembly members come here. We understand their language. Even if we can have that right here, and ordinance is this or whatever, it just will make the process way easier.
Gotcha. Heather?
Yeah, so in absence of an involved equity officer, I think, and in the challenge of this committee only meeting monthly, I think one of the priorities might be trying to educate both the assembly and the municipal staff on how they should incorporate equity into their work, like without having to be told. And then just trying to think of some tangible examples. Like in my work, I mentioned earlier, like, oh yeah, a parent isn't going to take a kid to get their ear infection looked at or treated. And for some people that might just be like, wait, what? There's people that don't take their kid to the doctor? Like, I don't understand. I can't wrap my head around that. Or the example that Lori gave the other day about shoveling roofs and clearing the snow off of apartment buildings and stuff. And for, you know, it seems odd for the building inspector to be thinking about equity, but if they did, they might say, oh, we need to, you know, notify Mountain View landlords that they need to have the roof cleared or something. But it can't always just be this committee saying, hey, remember about this. And so educating people so they're using that lens when they approach the decision-making process, I think is important. Not sure how to tangibly do that, but just throwing it out there. It'd be nice, like I think Felix and Cameron already do this, and I think some of the other assembly members are aware of the diversity in the community and the challenges that some people face, but I think there's more to be done to get people to really use that in their decision-making process.
Thank you, Heather. Very, very, very important. And that would involve the community legwork side of it, getting that out, that information out. But relative to our interfacing with the assembly, you know, and this will come up further in my discourse, but we're already here now. And so I would wonder, is there any kind of way that assembly-wise, I know we have these, what is it 9 committees? How many committees we have? Assembly committees?
I don't have the exact number, but
maybe around 9 committees.
I have it right.
And in our 2023 plan, you know, we talked about the possibility, the feasibility of having one of our committee members assigned to each one of these committees and interfacing with them. And we talked about in our 2023 plan of inviting each one of these chairs of all of these committees to come to our meetings, you know, and interface with us individually relative to that committee. And I think that would be a very good starting point if we just kind of made space for that in each of our monthly meetings, had one of the chairs come. But my question is this: is there any kind of way? I've attended a couple of meetings, Rules Committee, and I think one other. But is there any kind of way that we could have a direct interface with each of these committees? And here's what I mean by that. I mean, much like you guys liaison and sit in on our meetings and have input and recommend and all of that, if when we attend these committees as a member of this equity committee, that number one, we don't have to, maybe I shouldn't say that, maybe we would need to in some regard, but it may not be a necessity for us to have to get on number one on an agenda, or either wait for audience participation or something like that, that we would be recognized as a formal part of what that committee is doing and be able to give input while discussions are going on and that kind of thing. Is that a feasibility, possibility, what have you, that we could kind of work with the assembly committees and be interfaced in that way? And so we would be embedded into the actual work that each one of these committees are doing. And I think that would go a long way to be helpful in what we're trying to do. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Well, let me just. You in the beginning spoke about how sometimes we don't agree. So I'm gonna respectfully say that yes, you could do that, and I think you would spend a lot of time attending a lot of meetings, and I'm not sure why. And I'm not sure that one person that represents this committee would know what their role is in that other committee or how they would add value to that committee. I think that what I'm really interested in is this committee before it was this committee was a different committee, and it was what was it called, Thea?
It was the vaccine advisory.
Right. And one of the things that was I heard so strongly is that they were able to collect data. And that,
Well, just what was very different, and it's really what I think Lois was speaking to before, is that at the time, the Anchorage Health Department really needed this committee. And the Anchorage Health Department, actually it's my company, I came back, we were on contract to and we were doing a bunch of stuff during COVID for them, but one of the things we did was all the data analysis. And so we specifically developed the data and in a presentation every month, and then this committee reviewed it. So the committee was still in its current configuration where it's community members coming, once a month, but there was a very strong interest from the administration to listen to and act on what the committee said, and also a lot of support to provide information and bring really clear questions and issues for guidance. There was just a lot of support from the other side.
Right, and I guess that's where I'm going is that I think there was a clear problem established, and there was a group of people that all agreed that here's the problem we're trying to address, and then there was actions being taken to begin to think about how to address those. And I think one of the challenges we face, again, I think it's too broad, and I would just go back to the equity officer that we had before our current one, and many of us got a chance to work with him, and if you could read about what he did in King County and Tacoma and those areas, that some really amazing work happened there. And it started with understanding the problem. It started with getting the information necessary to be able to understand what the equity issues are in this city, and to be able to make conscious choices of we're going to work on that one, and work on a policy, work on a change, work on something related to that. And so that's I guess what I would say is that I do think that this committee would benefit from more engagement from the assembly, and I think that would be important. I think that more assembly members should be coming to this meeting. I think that members of this committee certainly should get more informed and engaged in work that is happening on a broad basis. But I worry about it being a lot of energy and a lot of time when I think it would be more beneficial to make some sort of targeted choices about what the group wants to do over the next year. So that's my response.
That's for me. Asher's had it here for a while.
Thank you for watching that for me. We'll go to Asher and then we'll come back. Asher?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I'd like to echo what Assemblyman Perez just said. I mean, I initially raised my hand because I am not surprised for a moment that, the Assembly, that this could be a committee that is misunderstood. Even the name of it, the Equity Committee, when we heard on Thursday from, was it Zinnia? We might as well call ourselves the critical race, committee. I feel like people hear that and automatically, it doesn't even matter. They have no clue what we do. They hear Equity Committee, oh, that's that. We are against it. And I don't necessarily know what to do about that, but I feel like that it's relevant anyway. But so, I mean, with that though, I think it speaks to what Assemblyman Perez was just talking about with ideas of focusing on targeted choice, on being super focused on a specific issue or two, and maybe the name of the committee even changes based on what that is. But I do agree that having something targeted that you can collect data on, that we can each go to, put boots on the ground for is a way to move forward with creating the policy change that we want.
Thank you, Asher. And yes.
And then I think Lori also wanted to speak. So I will agree with Cameron, and I'll sort of frame it slightly different. So I think this committee has sort of two choices. It can either blend itself into the work that the Assembly does, and I think this committee may unfortunately get lost in the haze, because it is a lot. The Assembly is a full-time job. Or this committee can figure out what actions and outcomes it hopes to achieve, and touch the nerd me, as this whole conversation was happening, I was thinking of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and the MCU has like a prime timeline. And does this committee really want to be a part of that prime timeline, or does it want to be its own timeline that crosses and intersects with the prime timeline every now and then, and provide and guides that timeline, right? I don't think this committee really wants to get involved in the day-to-day Assembly work. I think it wants to intersect and guide.
Thank you. Any other input?
No.
I don't want to usurp. Yes. Lori. Okay.
Well, I sort of want to maybe flop the way we're viewing this committee. I think it's fantastic. Look at who's here. Look at the 15 members that have gathered. We, just by being in this room, are a resource for the administration and the Assembly, and they're lucky to have us. And we're here, we can provide information, guidance, lived experience, and all of those things. And if we start viewing it as our role to try to convince them that we're valuable, then I'm not on board for that. And I think in some ways we've been set up to fail, in the sense that in order for me to really deeply be committed to the issues we select, I want to look at the data. I really want to understand. I come from our experience within the immigrant community, and I know what I see, but I don't get the data to back it up to really be like, is this affecting, the city in certain ways? And I know that everybody here knows that I have been beating the table for language access. And Felix really had, I felt like, my back in that when he asked for the audit. And I have asked at every single meeting. And so I know that that's sort of a particular issue to me, and I don't know if that's one that the whole committee would select, but it's of great importance to me, and I feel like I did my job on that as a committee member. And so I just want to flop it around in some ways that, I mean, if we are going to succeed, then, and I think we can, and I actually think we've done a lot of things. The fact that there's this many people here and we've been really struggling a little bit, and I'm in it for the long haul because I know change takes a lot of time, and this is, we're trying to be unique and different here, but I want to say we're fabulous in a lot of ways, and so.
Yeah, can I go get you the, oh, thank you. Yes, I agree. So I have a lot of thoughts. First, I think a lot of the work that we want to do, I think first of all, we really need to create our own identity. And on top of that, it's very important. I think for a long time, we've been ignored. There's Western words for that, marginalized or whatever, but basically just ignored, and we're invisible. So now, thank you to Cameron, really, I'm very grateful, and Felix, for heading this up. Because now we have a voice, so we have to expect that others who have been ignoring us are not going to be used to it. That's like, oh, now they've been called to the front of the line to be seen. And yes, we are going to be seen. You may not be used to it, like Felix was saying, other assembly members saying, what is it? What's out? You know, we're spending resources on you, what's the outcome? Well, I think the chief equity officer came up too. Hello, I just saw the executive compensation summary from the last agenda. We're talking 6 figures. So if we're gonna look for outcomes, you know, I think we're volunteers here. So for outcomes too, going into what outcomes do we wanna do, and we have a lot of dreams, but it takes a lot of work. I think that's really where do we see ourselves as volunteers, and where do we ask the administration for? This is important work, and somebody needs to be paid for this. So unfortunately, we have to wait until we have a chief equity officer who will prioritize what we want to do. We kind of have to figure that out, but I think we need to really face that fact that we are volunteers, and there are only so much we can do. And so I do want to include that too. I agree that we do need to have our priorities, what's important to all of us. And I don't know if it's now time for membership, that I think we also, although it's a big commitment to attend, I think we also need to set expectations to our membership that we do need to bring this out to the community. And we need to come to that agreement, because I think for a long time now, our community basically relies on that person who has the loudest voice in the community, but who are those that are quiet but are influential, and how do we find them? So I'd like to somehow incorporate that, so that our work doesn't just stay here. Thank you.
Thea, and then we'll get coffee.
Speaking to the desire to prioritize, which I totally support in principle, and as someone who looks at a lot of data all the time and has a bunch of it, so I could bring a bunch if we want to look at it. It still requires you to, as a group, choose amongst a bunch of things that are on fire. So, and when we have a diverse group, it isn't, it's just not easy to say, I mean, we did set some priorities last year. We said we were going to prioritize housing and homelessness, and we did. We came back to that many times over the year. But while we were prioritizing that, we also were getting all the other stuff that we also kind of handled. So I think I think what Felix was saying about sort of our key choices and kind of deciding on an agenda and kind of driving that on our own sort of timeline. And maybe, kind of like Cameron was saying, maybe we sort of decouple a little bit from all the other business that's happening, and we don't sort of have an open door to all those things. I think that's a really viable possibility, but that does require all of us to kind of say, yes, we want to go all in on income inequality. Like, that's a very, when I think about all this, like, that's where I get to. It's like, we could talk about wages and household wealth building, because it's foundational to a lot of things. But that might not be, that's not language access, right? That's not homelessness. That's not, I work in behavioral health a bunch. Like, it's not that, right? So I think I'm just saying, like, I don't think I think, yes, we want to have priorities. And I think an agenda is a good idea, but we then have to, kind of fall in line with each other somehow and kind of exert some discipline around it when other people try and get us to do other stuff. Which maybe we're now kind of at that point where we're like a little bit more mature as a group that we can do that. And I'm totally up for it if that's what everybody wants to do.
Thank you, Fia. Tafi?
After we developed this plan last year. I think let's not forget that we're only a year into the work, and I'm loving how much we have grown as a group, right? I think one of the things that I want to I think this is the right time also because it's election year. Let's not forget that it's election year. People are going to make promises and all the things, blah 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 blah. I think it's also important for us to okay, this is where we resettle, we reframe, whatever we need to do. Let's do it now so that when whoever's in power, that we are able to still work and do something to move things forward around equity. I also want to say that I think I would go back to what power do we have, right? I think that's the conversation that I would love to have, is that what authority do we have over any of the administration or the assembly? And what kind of power, if we cannot identify that, what kind of power can we have in our community? Can this group be do we have that power where we can bring all of our communities together and say, assembly, you wanted to hear from our community, this is what it is, and show our power, right? If that's what needs to happen, then maybe that is what we need to do. So I'm just saying, a lot of folks in this group are representing groups, and so maybe it is the collective power that we need to show in order for people to respect the time that we're volunteering to do this work, right? So that's what's going on in my brain right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tafi.
Sorry, just quickly, I just wanted to reinforce that I feel, to the point made by Lori about data, I feel like that helps create a mandate when it's transparent to the community what the problems are. That puts pressure on our leadership to solve those. And so I think the more that we can shine a light on data that we have that highlight these problems, and then also delve into areas where the data isn't as clear, I think that would be a wonderful impact that we could create. I also agree that although I wasn't a part of it, that work plan does seem like it's still very relevant and still very needed. And having an agenda that we're all aligned behind, even though we are a diverse group of people representing different communities, it is true that it's hard for quiet voices to sometimes have a seat at the table. Being a part of the LGBTQ community, and especially with some of the rhetoric that happened both in the news and within our community, there are many people in my community who are silent, who are unwilling to share the discrimination that they feel and the oppression that they are presented with, even just simply being in public and walking into bathrooms. And so I would say that as we are all individuals representing these diverse communities coming together, the bus is heading in the same direction for all of us on the work plan that was created last year. I think making it relevant to the coming year would be a good use of our time, and as Thea had said, aligning our efforts to make that impact helps all of our communities, helps all those silent voices. So I would love if that is what we could create today.
Thank you, sir. Anyone who's not had an opportunity to speak and wanted to weigh in before I double back?
Okay, so.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm kind of new here, and I've just started this last year, and I've only attended 2 meetings. And it was really nice when I get all the information from this committee, and I shared it to our Filipino communities. And it's a good information to share. But what I was lacking of and the understanding of what really this committee was all about. So then with this today, where we, you guys said, Felix, and he said something about what are our expectation of this committee. So yeah, by addressing, or I guess what the assembly would expect of us, what we are supposed to do, and respond to what that expectation is. And so, like you were saying about, understanding of all, first, to understand what the equity in the community that we can go ahead and share to our, the people in the Filipino community, for instance. I know the Filipino community doesn't have that much of a voice because they don't speak. They just hide, and then they start to blend in. So what I wanted to see and bring to our community is to understand and bring forth what is the what we need to I guess and see what the community that we can contribute, or what we can have some problems with, and we can go ahead and have it corrected, or not corrected, but can be shared to the assembly.
Okay, thank you, BB. Alrighty.
Yeah, I've really appreciated today's conversation and the commitment to data to inform our decisions that it seems like this group has. One thing I've been thinking about, and I think Hannah mentioned this earlier, we're talking about kind of our route towards the assembly and needing a cookbook or a playbook for that. And as we narrow in on our scope and kind of a specific focus area or the work of this group, also considering the many other bodies of work in the community that maybe just don't have the resource to know how to embed equity into their work, and taking on that of saying, as the equity committee, here's 5 questions that you can ask yourself when you're making decisions to think about: did we make sure everyone has language access to this? Do we make sure we thought about how this would impact these various groups, or the equity embedded in all of those decisions, and creating some sort of like playbook or resource for community bodies to hopefully allow them to embed that into their own work as well, rather than like us showing up at every meeting they have and being like, remember equity, which isn't going to be super impactful and is going to take a lot of resources.
Thank you, awesome.
I think just to kind of maybe summarize a little bit what we're all talking about. So I think there's sort of the question of, are we gonna lead this work? So like you were saying, are we gonna draw from the work that we're all doing in our communities and then kind of put an agenda together and really like drive that forward? That seems like one option. Another option is we are a kind of responsive and advisory body. That seems like another viable approach. So that seems like something that we should maybe decide today. And then just in terms of priorities, I think it's true, this is a really nice work plan. So I don't know that we necessarily have to reinvent the wheel, but if the goal, if the group wants to be more focused, and I think that's kind of that first question, then what within here, should we kind of push on? So, and maybe we should take a break before we dive more into it. Thank you.
Thank you. And let me.
Whenever it's appropriate, go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say this because I wanted to double back from long ago. But anyway, number one, Cameron, I don't see your discourse and input relative to what I'm stating as confrontational in any way, disagreement. I mean, but my thought is, and you and Felix as well, but my thought is, no, I do not personally want to get lost in Assembly's work to that degree, but I do feel that it would be effective for us to at least have an inroads if we had an assignment of a committee member to a meeting, particular group, and become aware and understanding of what that committee is all about and what they're trying to accomplish and all of that, and have a space where it may be a point in time when the equity question needs to come up in a certain area. I think that would be important. And with that thinking, I think it would also be important to be able just to have the recognition of being able to sit at the table. And that, I think that's important. I don't want to, as Laura alluded to, I don't want us to get lost in trying to create a value for ourselves, because we have value, we are valuable, and so that's not my intent at all. But I do think it's important, well, for me, let me just speak for me, I do think it's important for me to know what the thinking of the Assembly was about this committee. And not that we could create a value for ourselves, but just being aware of what's thought about this particular committee is helpful to me and in going forward. So I do think there's value in being able to sit at the table. I come from a background where we didn't have a seat at the table always, and so it's always important to me to have a seat at the table when decisions are being made, and not to have to come to fight after the fact, so to speak. And so that's the vantage point I was coming from with that. But anyway, yes, ma'am.
Just specifically on that, last time we worked together in a work session, we looked at all the committees and we kind of tried to divvy them up. And Pastor May, you and I ended up going to the Rules Committee, and I wonder if maybe there's a kind of a place in the middle here where maybe the question is, should the Equity Committee have a place at the table at the Rules Committee? Because that seems like the one where all the members come, and it's kind of like a super committee maybe over the other committees, or I don't know. It just seemed like the one where you all have the most sort of free conversation about things that are happening.
That's kind of where my interest lies.
Yeah, totally. So maybe it's not. I think generally, I totally agree with you. I think it's weird to show up, to kind of introduce an assembly. Like, we did go through this process, and it is a little bit weird. Like, I did the health policy one, and you show up to introduce the Equity Committee, which is another assembly committee, but it happens during audience participation. It's just like and you can't get around what that looks like. It looks like this committee doesn't have a seat at the table, which is
that's kind
not cool, right? So I just wonder, I feel like no matter what we do, and I think you're right, we could waste a ton of time going to a bunch of committee meetings and never getting them done, but this piece of it, I think, needs to be addressed.
Yeah. But, and I also agree that we need to focus on a couple of things. Yes, sir.
So I think that's a good idea. I think that the Rules Committee is likely a good place to interface. I was just a couple of things. I was looking at the Chief Equity Officer's job description. This came up in a recent meeting, and the most of the things that are in there are not being done. But it is a little bit of a guide in terms of what probably needs to be done in terms of collecting the information, understanding what the issues are, developing targeted sort of ways of addressing those. And so, but I would just say that one of the things that's happened during this administration, generally speaking, I don't think this is in any particular area, it's across the board, is that the Assembly realized that so much of what needs to be done in the city is not getting done, right? And so there is a change in tactic that happened, and I can give you tons of examples, Felix can give you other examples of where we've had to work with the situation we have. And there have been lots of examples where we've worked to try to contract outside of the administration in order to get something done, right? So I would just say that if this committee believes, for instance, that we need to collect more data, we need to develop a framework for understanding what a city of our size, bringing somebody in, having that sort of thing. I think that this committee can, through a variety of different processes, try to work with us in the assembly and the administration to get those things done. The committee itself can say, well, in order to function effectively as a committee, we need these things, and these things cost money, and go through the process of asking for that. And it's not a guarantee that it will be done, but I do think that it's a situation where you don't have resources, you don't have an ability to do the things you need to be done because you don't have the information, that sort of thing. So I think through this planning process today, having some conversations about that, doing a little bit of a visioning of, okay, let's just imagine for a second. Let's imagine you had, resources to be able to do what you needed to do. What would you do? What would be the things over the next year, 2 years, 3 years that you would do? And take away money, take away access, take away these things for a second, and just imagine what those things would be. And then let's use that as a way to develop some priorities, and let's figure out a way to do it. Because I think waiting until we have a new administration or waiting until, I don't think that is the way to go. So I'd be really interested in this group talking about what are the things that are most important in terms of, and what is the information and the resources you need to get those things done. The last thing I'll say, and this comes back to the focus conversation, is I also think that this committee is rich because it brings in people who represent and are here to represent different communities in different parts of this community. I think one of the things that should be a commitment of the committee is to be able to both bring that, but also to be able to at times focus on someone else's community, right? So if there is a decision we're gonna work on this one thing, and that's not the priority of my community necessarily, but it's the priority of this committee. So I'm gonna put my energy into that because I'm part of this group. Because if I think if we always say, well, that's not, it's not a language access question, so I'm not gonna really participate in that. Or it's not an LGBTQ issue, I'm not gonna participate in that. So I think that's part of it, is whatever priorities we come up with, I think there should be a willingness of this committee to dive into that. Because if we always just represent our stakeholders in every issue that we're talking about, I don't think we'll make very much progress. Thanks.
Thank you for that.
Yes. Thank you. I totally agree, but I think we've been talking that we're different. And I think the picture of, if you know the Reverend Alexa, rest in peace, he had this training on cultural diversity a long time ago where I still remember the picture in his video. He has this very, very tall 7-foot basketball players who are coming into a classroom, and with these chairs, the old chairs with a desk, and so the 7-foot players trying to fit into that little tiny desk, right? And so I feel that that's what we're doing right now, because although we are in a table, the Filipino table we discuss is not like this. So I think we need to consider that our language isn't like this. I mean, we attract people who understand these Western languages. And I think, like John said earlier, we need to first focus, so it's kind of like, I know we have big, hairy goals, or at least we want to, but I think we kind of need to back up the bus and see who are we leaving out. And those are the ones who doesn't understand what we're doing because they didn't feel included in the first place. So just if I go into like our AFA meeting and it's like, what is an ordinance? So how do we include them, and how do we make our committee less threatening to them? I think we need to include that and somehow think about that. How are we really changing the system if we hear the committee members are really given no choice but to play with the rules we have now? And the rules weren't made for us. So I think we need to address that going forward. It's the equity part. That's what that means to me. It's like if I don't understand what you're talking about, and we're not talking language because Filipinos speak English. So it's a process issue, but I think that should be a priority. I mean, if we are the equity group. And along with that is the data. I do not doubt data is important, but I also want to point out that our communities are usually left out of the data because we're afraid to participate in the data collection. So data collection in our communities, at least the Filipino communities and the Filipinos I know, don't fill those out. They don't know what it's about. And it's not a language translation issue. Because even if it's in Tagalog, I can tell you, it probably won't be the same. The outreach is different, and it's not just language translation. So I want us to just really think about that as we think about the change we want to make.
Yeah. I think personally for me, we need to focus on equity as it relates to the areas that we choose to work in and that we choose to prioritize, focus on equity. I do think, and I want you to hear my heart. Here's what I'm actually saying, and hopefully it comes in a way that you can hear what I'm saying. And that is this: I don't think that we necessarily need to become all things to all people. As it relates to even the broader community. I mean, we are the Anchorage Equity Committee of the Assembly. That's the legislative arm that we're under, and that's our entitlement as far as how we are titled. But we did set up to also interface with the administration. And I also think at some point we need to, I've had sit-downs before with him, but we need to get the administration side of it on board as far as the mayor and sit down, so he understands we're not about threatening you in any shape, form, or fashion, but this is who we are, this is what we're about, this is our work, and you're part of the municipality. And we need to interface with all sides of this. So to speak. And so I think that's one thing that we really need to do as well. But all things to all people, when we decide what we're about, how and where do we want to effectuate change? Is it in the process? Is it in the policy process? Is it in the allocation of funds? Is it effectuating change in our municipal government from the inside out so the outside can be affected? But if we're trying to, you talk about spreading thin, if we're trying to work on the inside and then trying to interface with all these various communities and issues and all of that, I think that's a whole nother, segment versus what we really ought to be about as far as working with the administration and the legislative arm as it relates to ineffectual equity within the municipality. And so whatever those things that we decide on, if it's one or two or whatever, it needs to be how we're going to effectuate change on the inside so that it shows up on the outside. All right, Taffy.
So, from the conversation that we've had, I feel that I think one of the, what we're trying to identify is how can we maybe create, maybe some, one of the things that because we cannot be everywhere at the same time, right? I think that's established. I did attend, I think it was one of the Rules Committee meetings and then the Housing and Homeless Committee meeting. I think there needs to also be one of us in the Housing and Homeless Committee, but I also feel like maybe the Rules Committee. But it's also a lot, right? Yes, I definitely agree that we cannot be everywhere all at once. But I feel like maybe our input and what we can offer to these committees is like guidelines or like cheat sheets, right? How like maybe every like when we're meeting, like we can develop those things and like we can, you know, give it to them. And if they're coming up with ordinances or they're reviewing things, that they can actually like have these like guidelines of how like for themselves to help each other, like to help themselves, right? Where we don't have to be present in the space, but they actually are looking at these questions, like, you know, the question that we have, like, who is missing? Look around who's missing, and then who's the most marginalized community that needs the resources? How are we allocating these resources? So that it's like we're actually creating tools, and then they will, so they can like answer those questions that they as they develop budgets or whatnot. So that's my input. I also am going to step away at the top of the hour so that I can focus here, but thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you, Taffy.
Can I add what was just said?
Okay, and let me say this, we're getting around about the halfway point, and Thea alluded to a minute ago, I think we'll take a break and then come back together, but go ahead.
So I just want, this is a bit, maybe this will help in terms of role. So if the budget committee of the assembly had a chief financial officer in the city that literally did not do their job, right? Then that committee would be up in arms. They would be going to the assembly, they would be going at saying, our city is not being run financially effectively. That person's not doing their job. We as a committee cannot function as a budget committee. If the public safety committee had a police chief and a fire chief that literally did not do their job, did not follow the job description, didn't do anything that they necessarily were hired to do, then they would be up in arms, right? So I would just argue that part of what's going on here is you have a six-figure salaried senior person in the administration who is your link to the work of the city. And I just put the job description up on the teams, who's not doing any of that, right? So you don't have the data that he's supposed to be bringing to you. You don't have the reports that he's supposed to be bringing you reports on exactly what's happening in the city. He's supposed to be developing targets for how to address equity, and that none of that is being done. So it's not a surprise that the committee is like, why can't we get the things that we need, right? And so, and I would just lastly say that it's not all about money, but the truth is that a lot of, when we think about equity, the word equity, it's the distribution of resources and how they're distributed in our city. And if you had information in front of you right now that showed that resources are being disproportionately allocated in our city towards certain communities and not towards others, and you saw that specifically in healthcare or education or in housing or in whatever it is, and then we went to policies that the city has in terms of what regulates that and how that's done. And this committee sat down and go, okay, what do we do? How do we change that? How do we change that policy to stop that unequal distribution of resources in our city? So that's just, I think that partly, and I would just say that I think that sometimes we're just being really nice. And I don't think this committee has to always be nice. I don't think you have to be nice to the assembly. I don't think you have to be nice to administration. I think that part of the power comes from the realization that you are a fully fledged committee that has been approved by the assembly, and you have the power to speak, and you have the power to request and to demand, and so I would love to see that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Cameron, for that. And that just comes full circle back to where I started from about doing the work of the committee, so to speak. And I know I agree that it's not going to be nice all the time if we actually delve into some of the things we need to delve into. And that's why I raised the flag a minute ago about working both sides of the channel as it relates to the assembly side and the administrative side, because when you raise the flag about, I'm on board with that. I have issues 100% with, we have a chief equity officer that's getting paid to do a job that's not being done, and we've raised Cain about that in the past. And so hence we've got some things in writing that were supposedly to put teeth into the process, but the process is still not being worked. And part of the problem with that is the chief equity officer is under the auspices of the administration, and as far as job description and what he does and what he doesn't do and all of that. And so until we interface with the administration relative to his position and what he's supposed to be doing, we're going to have an issue. And that's why I said at some point we need to meet with the administration, and so we can get the ball rolling in the direction we need to get it rolling. Because I mean, he comes to our meetings, and he alluded to that earlier, but he has no input. He has no gives us nothing, no nothing. Just sits in the meeting, so to speak. And it's not that if you don't want to seem to be picked on, but I mean, you ought to know that you ought to be doing your job. You know what I'm saying? And yes, ma'am.
Really quick, so what is the equity officer doing?
Good question.
I mean, because maybe we can just go where he's actually doing something and, just go that way so we can accomplish what we need. What is he doing?
Yeah, we may need to push him along, so to speak. He's not.
He had the city session, that's what I was aware. We requested a report, and the report never came, so we're just waiting for whenever that's going to be issued, but there were listening sessions, that's all I heard.
Do you want me to address that question?
Go ahead.
Okay.
I see you.
Thanks. So to address that question, the chief equity officer really does sort of three things. One is the listening sessions. As we understand it, Junior is either doing or is planning a second round of listening sessions. I don't really know. And then the second thing that Junior focuses on a lot is workforce. So Junior, he likes to plan, at the Denina, the city had their citywide job fair, and I think Junior was one of the planners for that. So he likes to do that kind of thing. And the third thing that Junior does is staff the mayor.
What is a listening session?
I wouldn't know. You'd have to ask Junior.
What was that?
What is a listening session?
Oh, what? I thought you said when. Essentially, again, as I understand it, because Junior's never really given us any reports, Junior organizes with specific communities, so with the Latino community, or he might even actually be more specific, like with the Mexican community or with that community, sessions where he listens to folks talk about whatever issues they may have. That's as far as I know.
Thank you. This,
Wow.
as a question.
Just a second, you got me.
Okay. So, yes, I have, I've worked with Junior. He contacted me first that he's equity, and he wants to know what the Filipino has some problems or any input to the community and stuff. And so he wanted, he's more of diversity, working with the school district, with the children. And so that's how I came to talk to him, because the Alaska Federation, the ALPHA for short, is we have a new program for the our what's to say our the kids and stuff. And So that's where he was talking to me about, how we can get our program going and what type of resources that we can get from the municipality or some other also. So that's where my interaction with Junior. So then I saw an email that was when I was at when I was in my cruise, and he said that he wants to arrange a meeting again and see and work with our community. So that's where I got interaction with him. That's what I want to talk. To just he did something for us, and I don't know what else that he does. And,
Okay, that's some follow-up from that. We got to read that.
When I used to work here, I've seen him with a municipal vehicle. Does he get issued, do you know if he's issued a municipal vehicle as well?
So I think, as I said, he staffs the mayor, so he probably uses that vehicle with the mayor, yeah.
So just briefly, what does staff the mayor mean?
Yeah, thanks. So basically, and I know because I've staffed a mayor in the past. So basically, the mayor goes to a lot of events, right? Holds a lot of meetings. So staffing the mayor basically is you're like the body man for the mayor. You go, and in fact, maybe I shouldn't say this on the record, but like I've seen specifically Junior basically step in between the mayor and an angry constituent. And that's part of the job of staffing the mayor.
Okay, because I figured that was probably part of it because he's interfaced for the mayor with our organizations, in the past. I mean, I don't mind saying it. We invite the mayor to be a part of a specific gathering, and he had other things to do, so he said, and he wanted to send Junior speaking. I told him, I said, no, that's not acceptable. I mean, we'll acknowledge his presence, but Junior, you are not speaking at our deal on the mayor's behalf. We want the mayor or not have anybody. And so the mayor decided to come after we issued that kind of ultimatum. But yeah, so I get that part of it because where the mayor is, he shows up and runs interference, so to speak. But I don't think that's the job of a chief equity officer. You know what I'm saying? Yes, ma'am.
I think one way we could address the chief equity officer role and, like you were saying, Pastor May, really address it at the administration level is this afternoon as we kind of develop our priorities and agenda. That's a very, that could be one of our first steps is we're going to come and bring that to the mayor, and then within that agenda, hear this is the support we need from the staff member it's not in the job description, but it seems like they're most suited to support this committee. And so, and just kind of lay it out of like, this is what we want. And then if it's not delivered, then we have a really clear way of, kind of coming back to that. I think right now, we haven't really said what we want Junior to do. I mean, that isn't entirely true actually, because, through the Welcoming Anchorage resolution that we worked on supported, it really clearly actually says, and we have received one report that I think his office worked on, which was within the administration or within the municipality, is it called the equal? It's the one that tells you like by department what the makeup of each department is compared to the demographics of the community. And I don't know where that community came from, or that report came from, but it's a pretty useful report. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and the thing of it is, the assembly and Mr. Felix and Mr. Martinez sponsored pretty much, and so you've got a job description on record as it relates to here's what we're expecting from you, and that is not being adhered to or fulfilled, and that is what we need to talk to the mayor about. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so it seems like nothing is going to change. Unfortunately. However, I think that if we want to be heard and maybe work with the chief with the officer, maybe we can ask for listening sessions and just, work how he works so we can actually be heard and work together. Because if things are not going to change, why just fight all the time to, why aren't you doing this if that's never gonna happen? I will go with let's work together. Listening sessions and he's a chief equity officer, so he will have to listen to us. He comes here. So I believe that if things are not being done, we have to do it a different way. Maybe the way that they're doing it right now until something else happens.
And that sounds very good, Joan, and I think one of the things that we may need to do initially, even prior to sitting down with the mayor or whatever, is have a session in one of our regular monthly meetings where we invite Junior to explain himself, how he views his job description and what he's about in that regard and how he intends to fulfill that. And where can we help him with that process and get in where we fit in?
Yeah.
And then if he's still not doing that, then we need to go to his boss.
I believe that we have done that in the past. I believe that, this is my opinion. We need to work with them how they're working. Because this conversation we have had it quite a bit of times in the past. So I think that we need to shift directions and just, work how they're working in the meantime so we can have a saying, because that's basically how you sit at the table, even though if you don't want it, you don't like it. If we want things done, we will have to, unfortunately, maybe accommodate to how they're doing things.
Right, and I get you, Joan, but I guess what I'm saying is that we've not had a session. We've talked about ad nauseum about him not doing what he's supposed to be doing. We've had that go round in our meetings and what have you, but we've not set him on the carpet and listened to him relative to the job description that's been given him now and how he intends to fulfill that, because that's what we need from him, the data and all of this other stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and he has done it at the assembly. He has been put in the assembly and justify his job. I've been there with Lori. So we can do it, but in my opinion, the more that I don't want to say fight or contradicts ourselves, the less work that we are moving forward a little bit. And I think that he's trying to do the best that he can do. So, and I don't want to minimize his work either. So I think that we just will have to put a step forward, maybe accommodate on how he's doing his job.
Robin, can I speak to this just briefly?
Yeah, just a second, but I don't want to lose her thought.
Yeah.
So I guess my question with that is, if he's not doing a job that we literally need him to do, and he's doing something totally different and going about it in a way that's not really conducive to helping us get what we need, and if we're trying to figure out a way to get into that process and involve ourselves with what he's doing that really he's not supposed to be doing, and he's supposed to be doing this, that gets kind of.
I completely understand.
Yes,
So there's two pieces to it I think that's really helpful. One is that I think there is a strong argument for these are your tax dollars, right? This is your money that's being spent on him doing something different than what his job is. And so I think there's value in that and addressing that and talking about that. But I also agree, we've gone through that. We've been through that before and not made any progress. And I would agree with you that I'm not sure you're going to make any progress this time.
Yeah.
Anyway, the other thing that I wanted to say is this is what I was trying to say about, and whether you agree or not agree, what many sort of committees have started doing is working around the administration. And so figuring out a way to get the information they need, to get the things they need, without the typical way, which would be, hey, administration, these are things that we needed to do, let's do them. So I think that's another thing to explore, is that if you need data to understand what the equity issues are in the city, and there is some already available and gathering that, but I think there are ways to get some of that work done and not have to be through him. And so I think that you can explore that, and I think and Felix and I certainly can bring some ideas to that as well, about if your priority, regardless of who does it, is here are the things we need. We need this information, we need a framework to understand it, we need that sort of thing, then let's hire a contractor. Let's bring somebody in who's not with the administration. Let's get the work done so that you guys can begin to have the information you need.
Yeah, and I think that's good relative to, I see your hand, relative to getting that work done. But it doesn't speak to the fact that you say 6 figures or whatever that somebody is making to do a job, and then we've got to pay somebody else to give us the information that he's supposed to be giving us. So that's why I think we need to speak to his boss, the one who's responsible for him fulfilling his job description. And I think he'd be susceptible to a few more things because it's an election year. And if he's reelected, he'll already know where we stand and what he needs to come forward with. And so that's just kind of my thinking on that. I saw hands. Thea, yeah.
Just a suggestion when we come back from our break on, so I think if we wanted to kind of form our agenda, decide on our priorities, we can kind of go one by one through these 3 kind of buckets that we identified. I think the first question is there anything missing from the list that's under each main heading? And then after that, is there one thing that stands out on all of these that we want to work on? And I think if we could kind of maybe just use those 2 questions for each of the buckets, that would help us. I mean, it would be wonderful if we could come up with one priority under each of these 3 buckets. I don't know if that's possible. But maybe as we take our break, people could kind of look at that section 3 of the plan, and just kind of be thinking about, is there one of these that I think is really timely and necessary, for 2024? Maybe we just kind of confine ourselves to 2024 for now. Because I think this discussion we've had this morning is really great about how we work, and then the flip side of that is like, what's our priorities? What are we going to bring to, if it's the administration, or what do we might need some budget for? So just a suggestion of how we could go through those three sections under section 3.
Thank you, Ms. Thea. And what's the recommendation for break time? What say you? No. How much time is what I'm asking? Like how long? How long do y'all want to break? 10 minutes. That's like 12:30. It works.
Alrighty.
Yeah, it's right there. So it's hard to see, but it's
45:11.
Oh, where are they?
I don't know. I'm expecting somebody to deliver us food. It's not here yet.
Okay.
I know I have.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I was like, I totally recognized you. I don't know where I
Yeah, I'm sure.
I know it, but then I didn't make the connection with you.
Good
to meet you.
Yeah.
But I do actually.
Well, we set a date for
Well, at least it cut better for my body.
I hope so.
Okay.
But I don't know where I would have met you before, but you're from Alaska.
I am. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I was up in Fairbanks for 3 years. I was down in Juneau the 3 years prior. I was in San Francisco and moved up just about 13 months ago-ish. So I met you at some point and all that. Yeah.
What the rest of my life are you talking about?
Thank you.
So
It was good. It was very relaxing.
Very good organization.
Yeah.
The organization I run has had the
Yes.
opportunity to part over the years.
Yeah.
I would love to explore that some more.
I agree. I think that'd be incredible. I know for us to do a stronger partnership.
you know.
Yeah, I think in general, that's something
Well, especially
that
like
identity could,
outside.
I have the gym to do better now, is building and finding ways to, meet another organization's goals that is super aligned with ours, you know?
Yeah. Well,
Like
so
last weekend,
we just
wasn't right.
finished a new 5-year strategic plan.
Oh,
It's
wow.
a year to develop it.
Okay.
It's a big process. And
Okay.
so I've been doing a lot of
So
partnership
that makes
meetings
kind of
over
a
the
big
last time.
Yeah.
You know.
Looking forward to it.
But this weekend,
Okay.
it
And
didn't
I'll
quite
just
look like
give you a preview that one of my mandates from my
But
board
sometimes even
is
just,
that
we can get to like,
is to look for organizations
Yeah.
that are interested
It's like
in
springtime.
because
Oh, great.
my majority
Mhm.
my whole career is in nonprofit work is are these things where we write grants.
Nice.
Nice.
You.
Yeah.
Just coming.
I'll stop smacking.
Yeah, stop
Yeah, but that transactional nature is limiting. Yeah, yeah.
So to think about
Even if that.
if there truly is mission alignment, if there truly is value alignment,
Is
if
the
there truly
4511 work?
the kind of
Yes.
things that
Yes, it does.
what you're trying to accomplish as an organization
Mhm.
is very similar to us. You have a different role than we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're complementary.
Yeah, same destination with different tools.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exploring this.
I gotta pace myself. Worry.
I know, that's what I said, I'll stop smacking.
Nature of it. But like
Yeah.
a 10-year MOU.
Mm.
To go, let's so if money's there or not there or things are there, but we're still partnering, right?
Yeah.
We're still talking on a
Yeah.
regular basis.
We're still moving.
exploring that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
I love it.
And we make a commitment to actually learn. So that when something
It is a
comes up-
Saturday. I'm not gonna come
I
in here
know.
all
Yeah.
messed up.
Yeah.
It's like my favorite thing.
Yeah.
Even
What I
Fridays,
find
I'm
is
like,
that many of us don't really know each
I
other
just get,
very well.
Yeah.
I don't
That's
even
fair.
have a step down. Like, I
Yeah.
just get
And
tired.
said, I'm gonna really
Like,
understand you.
Yeah.
And some people, if I have a day where it's like, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna wear something like a collar and then.
Because then that's the kind of relationship.
Sometimes you get
Yeah.
caught though.
That's
You're
been
like,
my
like you
favorite
because
lesson
all
that
they're
I
doing something
look
like,
for in
oh, this one's
organizations.
interesting.
Very in a way.
Yeah.
And again, there's no downfall, right? If
Yeah.
we decide we're not gonna be partners anymore, we just go off on
Oh, totally.
But I
Yeah.
think that in that upfront work to explore that,
Mhm.
it can be really powerful.
That's a really wise perspective that your board has. I fully agree with it. And I think honestly, that's one of the things that holds identity back.
Semi-professional.
There's a lot of organizations that are very mission aligned to us, and we have this transactional relationship. You know, I mean, even 4-H,
I
you
wrote
know,
calendars.
like is even still healthcare. You know, we're still like that with them, where it's like, here's this grant, let's do this together, and then it dissolves. And if we take that longer approach to it, it'll help us with our service line development. It'll help us with our programming, all those things. That way, we can do what we do really well and further your mission by number one, not stepping into areas where you're going to do really well, but then also by ensuring that, like you said, like this sounds like no, this is a humanities fund. Let's partner. Let's figure out how we can support them.
And also, I think all of us do.
So several people are
what
looking
we
for
do
happy
really well.
Mhm.
Get really good at what we do.
Yeah.
And,
The community benefits from that.
And
Yeah.
there's always something to pull you out, right?
Yeah,
There's always
yeah.
something that
But
there's money.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
And so
It's such a pitfall. Yeah. I love it. Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's exciting.
I have a lot of people
is to try to find those things, but also we're always trying to figure out who we are. Right? We're always looking to explore that and getting really clear about that. So that actually helps find these relationships. Because
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
we're like, oh, that's good.
Yeah.
And so for instance, if you're the content expert in this, right? Then I don't.
I can't
want
remember.
to
I
be
wonder
a
what-
content
what
expert. I
Now
just
this
want
Yeah.
to be the
Well,
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
I
Yeah.
don't want it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, totally.
It's actually
Yeah.
really neat.
And so
You can
that's
go
what
to
it makes it really us really staying in our lane.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Yeah. I'm excited to talk more about that with
But
you.
then the
Yeah.
thing is,
Well, I'm glad you're in the position.
Thank you.
I'm sure you've heard a lot of that.
Yeah. I'm excited.
for their goats
To the neighbor.
to you to like do your lawn.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah, like put them in
Alright.
your yard.
Yeah.
And they eat all your grass. Which I totally wouldn't do.
Lori,
I don't think I would
was-
do grass anyway. But.
How was, were you at the, state,
I'm on the move for chickens
Yes.
next year.
How was it?
But slowly.
Yeah.
There was nobody there.
Really?
I mean, there were 3 of us there. There was Owen from
Who'd you
I
order
always say
from?
her name wrong, but
Judy.
James So Owen was there.
Owen doesn't work for them anymore. He works for the state coalition now.
Oh,
I think so, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so
He might,
I
that's
started
why
keep
this
them all
is
straight.
facilities.
He just moved like a month ago.
Okay, well, when he was on, he's
And they're just like,
on the committee then, so he must represent me there as
I just love
himself.
it so much. And then she
Not
gives them to
as
me
whichever agency
for me to
he's
cook,
with.
but I
And then
cannot
there was
cook them
one
the way that she
other
does, and so they're never as good.
person
Yeah.
there that I brought her
I know, but I think it's nice.
I think
You know,
I
Frying is an art.
I
Yeah,
know.
you gotta get it hot enough but not too hot, and
I saw
you can't burn them and leave them in there long enough. And
So-
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, but anyway, she's awesome. Her name's
People
Teresa
that are, that are worse the whole bit.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Her sister was
Some days it's hard to be optimistic.
You know, I was to say, if you, the
Then they have
guy,
their
what was his
sister,
name, the first equity officer guy, I can't remember his name, do you remember
Clifford?
his name? Clifford, right?
Um,
It was like, oh, like
Yes.
this man who had so much experience and so, and he
With
was
that
like,
particular issue, with like the research and the
and
exactly where
he was like, he was like, you don't have any conversation until we build a framework and we collect information. And then we'll bring that information to the community and we'll have an informed conversation about what's going on.
I had gotten a heads up about his deep concerns about language access, so you know I was throwing parties
Oh,
for
yeah.
myself.
It was super exciting. I had that
I didn't
moment.
even do this, I'm like, we're gonna get the information and we're gonna be able to look at it in a way in which we're gonna know where to put pressure.
Because it wasn't this vague idea of equity.
Yeah.
It was like, no, this is really like, this is what's happening in our city, real information, and then we can actually engage in it in a thoughtful way.
And I want access to what he did do.
Mhm.
Why can't I see that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the Seattle Tacoma area, that area, they've got a lot of the GAR, the GARE governments.
Yeah, so
Something on race, and there's a lot of, and there's another one on LGBTQ issues, that's right. There's a whole bunch of government-specific frameworks that cities have used. So it's not this random thing. It's really like a city. This is what they've done, and this is the progress they've made, and this is what they've used.
I have a relationship with the person that headed that up for that area around using contractors like peer-led navigators and around language access.
Yeah.
And they pay them, they work for the, contract for the municipality, they make $75 an hour.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
They,
No worries,
so when
no
they
worries.
need something, they know how to immediately implement it.
Is that your community?
Putting this in a language and they couldn't get the language as they tried to learn it. So they had our people on cell phone, like, there's a health department. Like, they're relying on
been great. I mean, I
using
think
informal
this is the-
people in a way that
This is the challenge of it, is figuring out.
had a
What are we
very, very
focused on?
specialized,
Is it, we could focus on so many
With
things.
personalized health information, yeah.
that were trained by
So,
others
tricky.
as a healthy community. Whereas we're paying contractors $250 an hour. It's just so hard, because it's all, for me, it's just women of color. It's just women of color doing it for their community,
I like
no
it.
compensation, holding a product in a way that, well, they themselves, like, we're literally holding the community together, and we're housing them because
Well,
we're
just
giving
like
them
when
a house,
an
and a
organization's
critical community
deciding
member supporting their
how they're
community
gonna
while they
budget.
themselves and their
Or
children
the
don't have
assembly's
it.
trying to pass.
You know, just like it starts to break it.
What's the language access?
Also, in order to try to stay married, I am no longer allowed to bring people into our home. My sweet husband was like, I'm
comfortable being in a house with women who don't speak English, and don't really know how to navigate this, honey. I love you and you work all the time and I'm here alone with this individual. Can you help me? Because he's a real laid back guy, but like, there are limits to that.
No.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to have, like, if language access is one, if there was like 3 things that we focused on, and we said, okay, what does it look like? Like, what is families change systems in the city look like? And then we're backward, okay, what do we need? Obviously, resources and money, but
Don't worry, I have space.
and all of these committees, which we've discussed, is during budget time, every committee makes budget recommendations. So this committee should be making budget recommendations so that money is going into the places that this committee feels like is necessary, and those who can't provide, and they put it to the budget, right? So that's another thing, is like timing that out real well, and a couple of months before the budget starts to get discussed, having this committee begin to look at what are the priorities and what are the things that it wants to do.
I think that's one way we infuse equity into all of it without having to pick a particular issue. This is kind of funny, but I also, both of you brought up the idea of actually just having that sheet to change the way people think, that they're looking at. Did we speak to the community? Was there language access? Or, are we, do we understand the terms? I mean, I remember how stupid I felt one time texting Forrest when he was on the assembly, and I was like, you keep talking about an AR, what's an AR? And this was 2 years ago. I was like, oh God, I just didn't know that meant assembly resolution. I was like, okay. But I felt very literate in the conversation because I was like, what did you talk on this? And I don't know what it is. What's an AR? What's an AR? Help me.
We're all professionals.
I mean, I totally agree, and I think that that's a bigger issue about the language and the ability to access all those things for this committee. Just being able to go, if you want to say something,
the fundraising,
it's a resolution.
Yeah, that was in our.
If you want to do something, it's an ordinance. Right? So,
but having that laid out in
like
there's
a
lot of money.
And then before the fundraising,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah, just when we were
I know,
planning, I think we raised 5,000 already in this. But the mayoral debate, so Evelyn is organizing it with the AACC.
this is why.
But so she wants a question like from each member, so she'll probably reach out to you, so maybe AFA can come and have, like forward 2 questions that you want to ask. And also all of the countries, member countries of AACC, basically bringing their people into.
Who's already decided?
March 16th, it's 46. Is it 46 or something like that? So that's the next one.
We pre-work on it.
All right. I know, she just called me about it yesterday, so she said she already had sent out invitations to the candidates.
Oh, word.
Great.
Good. Yeah, she said all, so I was kind of hoping
Yeah.
then, but.
I'm driving the Kenai today. Ella has a volleyball tournament. Yeah, so just for a day driving there.
I'm holding out for your fee.
Yeah.
Is it
I'm
coming?
driving
It's
there,
coming.
staying
It's
in a
coming.
hotel
It's
tonight.
coming.
Turns all the
I'm not here yet.
Oh,
Okay.
I have news for
Are you
you.
talking
It's
about
still in the down low.
the gospel restoration?
So,
We do have to take
Zero.
it for like,
They, I
a one day thing.
we were gonna think about flying, but I can't believe they charge $400 for a flight to go to.
So we
Kenai.
can take that.
I know.
It's like a 30-minute
exactly.
flight.
I know that they're high
It's like $99,
Right.
you know, thing,
They require you
And,
to not be to be sober.
Does
They
everyone
require
know?
you to
Yeah, I think it's new, so,
One-on-one time would be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. I was thinking about that, I was like, what would
That's what we do, yeah.
So we did.
Because it's about 3 hours, yeah, that's about.
So I think they're part of
Yeah,
an
it's
organization,
it's
so
like
maybe
sort
they
of boring, like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really
They
pretty.
probably do.
Okay, oh,
Maybe like.
Them
was it just
managers.
this session or is this, because I know he
We
was.
did it just like 2 or 3
Yeah.
weeks ago.
Oh, okay,
So
yeah, oh, yeah.
Let me know what's
So, I think maybe that's guys got it started.
So Nelson was there, and then there's a lot of interest in hearing about these issues and the impact and the things that we can do around IDs, around more equitable funding.
When did you start with identity?
For English language.
I'm in my third week.
Okay.
Very new. Yeah, it's been a busy month.
It's happening. So
Especially since tonight's our gala, our big event of the year. Last year we had about 300 attendees, raising about $78,000, which was quite amazing. Performers flying in from around the country. Tonight, so far our tickets have been sold out for a while. We're anticipating about 300 people again. We have a lot of auction items, so we're really hoping to beat last year's record. And we have a really cool DJ who's quite famous in a lot of Native circles. The Indigiqueer there to DJ, so it's gonna be a good time. It's gonna be a good party.
Cool.
Yeah.
Where is it?
It's in the Sheraton.
Cool.
Yeah, in their ballroom.
What are some of your like top auction items?
So the buyer for Brown Jug helped us with some. We had gathered some donations for the auction and helped us use those to make some selections of wine to have, and then donated himself about $500 worth of wine. So that total value of that is going to be I think about $1,200 worth in one big lot of wine. Last year that did really well. We didn't have the help of a professional, to make the selection. And then we have
I used to work with Helen.
oh, wonderful. Okay. Yeah, a connection through one of our board members who's been with us. Yeah. That one's really cool. There's like Alaska Airlines and whatnot has made some really cool donations for tickets and things like
There's
that.
gotta be a benefit process. Yeah.
And then I think one category of items also with insurance, which is a lot of quilts and art and things like that that are all somehow related to queer liberation or queer joy. And honestly, some of the artwork is really breathtaking. And so we have probably honestly like 70 items that fit in that category at the silent auction. So.
Is the silent auction only in person or is it also online?
Candace didn't wait to throw you to the wolves.
She did not, no. Yes, yeah. In fact, I think it was my second day. She reached out and I was like, hey. Exactly. Yeah, we're going to be looking at other venues next year, so we can have a bigger space, because we sold out too early. So we're hoping that we can make it so a way that doesn't happen next year.
But CD has brought some food in, so if y'all want to grab some or whatever, and then we'll be ready to roll.
You put my handmade sandwich rolls to shame. I'm not going to eat my own food. I mean your food.
So it doesn't look like it's open, so it looks like they closed the bids on it.
Yeah,
so they're probably going through the process then. And I don't know how long it'll take.
Whoa, see?
I mean, sometimes they take
Oh
months.
my gosh. Thank you, baby.
It's
just, right, we have been waiting forever for the money to be appropriated.
Like,
And this is the time one.
and then she
So
always packs
we're
it for me.
constantly meeting with
We'll
them.
get fat.
And they're saying,
So, they can just say shit.
They're like super special.
Alright.
Wow.
It's like.
Y'all gonna make me fat today.
Yeah, it's only one.
Yeah, that's that.
Once in a while.
We'll do anything.
Okay.
They're like, they're called ambulance.
Yes, I'll go get some.
Yes.
All right, this is going to go really slow.
These resources I sent you, it's interesting because local
Glad there's a facilitator.
like their own. So as you're thinking about things to do, sort of, especially when you're interfacing with local government, things like that, you kind of have to go to the things where
Better run. I was talking about Lori's
that
issue.
world, really have to a lot of, you bring something that's maybe meant for the nonprofit
We're gonna
world,
eat
the
old
business world.
school finger style.
Yeah, there are some huge.
That's
There's
John
more in
Mechanism,
this
yeah.
little room over here.
And so that's why I think, you know, whenever you're trying to do affect change within a city through governments, whether it's like policy or resources.
I appreciate you sharing these a lot. By background, I'm a health administrator, so I'm a fish out of water with this, so I appreciate that.
No, there's endless resources out there. That's something that I continue to
But it's
find.
hard to parse through it, to find out like this is a worthwhile
Thank you
tool
very much.
to understand and learn for here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah.
I'll do this, but I'm just letting it burn.
Unfortunately, I bought a ticket, but now I can't go.
Oh no, tonight?
My wife's gonna go, and
Okay.
I'm gonna go with her, but I have my daughter has a volleyball tournament in Keenan, so I'm leaving.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, that's a valid excuse.
But I went last year, and it was an incredible time. So
Yeah.
Sad, but
Yeah, it is. It's going to be a good time. It's I love that it's time for January. It's nice to have a reason to have some fun and get dressed up, you know, when it's cold like this.
Is it at Mad Burners? Is your fundraiser tonight at Mad Burners?
No, it's at the Sheraton, our gala.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah.
I have some time, really.
Yeah.
Because we held an event last week. Just what we thought was going to be a really small
I can
event.
see that, yeah.
And we thought maybe 20, 30, 40 people. We had 88 people show up.
Yeah.
Double what we thought.
I think the community's just like, oh, we need to get out.
It was on
Yeah.
Wednesday at like 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
it was packed. And so we
Yeah.
were like, wow, this is like
Yeah.
in January, there's something to it.
Yeah, I hear you.
People want to go out and do something in the middle of the week and have some fun.
We used to hold an event regularly in January, and everybody loves it in January. But we don't have the capacity to plan it, so nobody wants to work and plan the events in the end of December.
Yeah.
December.
Yeah,
January.
our clinic
That is
itself
hard
is
to do,
open
Well, you just come
5
off
days
the
a week, but
holidays.
we also do pop-up clinics that are
Yeah.
after hours on weekends too.
For one of your,
Is there?
you know, Amanda, she's on our board.
Yeah.
I love Amanda.
Project.
Okay.
She's pretty awesome.
For
sure.
providers.
Oh, wonderful.
Once a week.
Yeah.
Which is specialty.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And we have.
So are you looking for space to host that
Yes.
provider or? Okay, yeah. Set up.
Alrighty,
Yeah.
we're back in session.
All right.
Yes, I would like to.
Alright. And I guess as my illustrious co-chair alluded to a minute ago, esteemed co-chair 2023 priorities annual plan, we'll facilitate it for 24 at this particular point, and so we'll go to number 3 and deal with that, those parts that we need to deal with under that. One thing we want to do is target those areas that we were discussing that we wanted to target for 2024, what those couple of areas would be that this committee would like to target, and make those fundamental to our process for 2024, and then maybe identify some budget areas that we might need to request some funds in this spring budgeting process, and go to it from that angle. All right. Under number 3, I did see something, of course, that I wanted to at least ask a question about, and that is 3A5, I think it is, and says update Anchorage's equity strategic plan and priorities. Is anybody aware of or know where that plan exists? As far as our assembly liaisons, anybody know what that plan is?
I think there was a, at some point when you did your pillars document, I believe there was an equity pillar that you developed. That's probably going back 3 years,
Well,
maybe?
I think at one point it was a pillar, and then at one point it shifted to be something that was sort of foundational to all pillars.
Okay.
But then I think the idea that we became a pillar in order to, in some ways, to create this, right? I mean, the idea was that that it would allow us to actually yeah, so there was a plan that was created, and equity was one of the pillars. I don't think it's one of the priority areas now in our strategy.
No, it isn't.
Okay. Because I was just wondering if there was a plan somewhere that we could look at and tweak or whatever, but yeah. All right. So again, what are the areas that we want to target for 2024?
Are we looking specifically at A first, 3A?
Just A period. Yeah. Embedding equity in municipal plans, processes, and resources, is that what you alluded to?
Maybe if we took each chunk, A, B, and C separately.
Okay, I'm at 8 and I was on 8.5 a minute ago.
Perfect, I just was clarifying if what you were asking input on it.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm asking at this particular point is, we said, coming out of our last session, that we would identify a couple of areas that we wanted to target in 2024 specifically. And so I guess, so that we would, utilize the time and not come away without having done that, we would identify those couple of areas, right off. That's kind of where I was.
Yeah.
And if you had a different.
Perfect.
Okay, so what were those, yes ma'am, Marie?
Can
you make sure that we're using the next
Oh,
list?
yes, sorry, yes. So with number 3, and I'm not sure where this falls in there, but what's missing. It's an election year, and whether or not there's a new administration or not, maybe in the transition, we need to strategize on how to get our voices heard right off the bat with whatever administration is coming. That's where maybe we can get input on the executive appointments that usually are just done in-house. I don't know, that's just where equity really and diversity needs to happen. And so I think our voices will be needed in that. The purchasing number 3, A3 says granting, hiring, and contracting processes. So should there be a new administration or just a transition, we'd like to have a say, hopefully, on the hiring of who's in charge of that, and maybe as they develop their programs within each department. So, thanks.
Thank you. That was one of my biggest coming out of last year, the granting, hiring, contracted processes, and that was something that we were attempting to target with Change Lab, and looking at that, and so that's a good area. But I like the idea of looking at all of the appointments as they're being made to the specific areas of the administration. Yes, sir.
Just a couple thoughts, just in terms of format, and maybe this is something that we can look at as a little bit of a spreadsheet look because I think that what's interesting about this is as we go through these, you could say, here's what we did, right? Because many of these actions were taken this year, and there was progress made on many of these, and so it'd be really cool to say, well, this is what happened, this is what happened. And then if we're going to continue that as a subsection of our priority, what are going to be some of the ideas and actions that we take this year? And I think you just shared a few of them. So format-wise, you might think about being able to, maybe there's an opportunity to provide a quick report in the first year of the Equity Committee. Here's what we did. Here are some of the things we advised on. Here are the things, because as I'm reading through this, I'm like, well, that done, that done. So that looks kind of cool. But just in terms of ideas for next steps, having those just a process in the format.
Okay, my follow-up question to that is, you said you're looking at some things and you said that done, that done. Share with us.
Sure. So the represent the full community in naming public places, there was our law on naming for the city was completely rewritten and changed, and so that was that's a pretty profound shift in how we do that, and I believe that the new process for doing that is going to very much allow more voices and more diverse voices to be involved in that process. So that was done. And then the other one that I saw was the community. The providing input on resolutions, ordinances, and that sort of thing. I think the meeting with the rules committee, I think was a good step in that, and there was a number of things that were brought forward to the committee that this body had a voice in and shaping. And so I think being able to say, here are some of the examples, the work that Felix and George did. A number of things came through this committee, and so just being able to sort of mark those as this committee helped shape that, I think would be helpful.
Look, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to piggyback on what Cameron says. Reports are very important, just because we can give it to the assembly and they can actually read what we are doing and what we're accomplishing. And not just the assembly, but the public, the community members. It's like, look what the equity committee has accomplished, and also to the mayor. And for that, and with reports, I would like, and I don't know where on this list, what I'm gonna say, could be in. I would like to talk about the grant requirements from the municipality.
Yes.
They are so hard and so lengthy that it takes so much time to do. Yes, they look very professional, very, very nice. However,
Put them in English.
those usually the entities that apply for those grants are the ones that really need that money and are understaffed, and a lot of the people that help with those grants, the language is just put in English, so I don't know where that fits in here, but I would really like to see a little bit more of a reality check on grants that the municipality put forward.
Yeah, so it sounds like Ms. Thea, as you're note taking, it sounds like we have an interest in really targeting that granting, hiring, contracting process again, and really honing in on that. In as much as we had it as a headliner coming out of last year, but hadn't really honed in on it yet. And yes, ma'am.
I just want to interrupt, I'm sorry for a second. Can we park out there? I'm watching people getting parking tickets and I've seen, do we need to do something special on Saturday?
He said he would take care of it.
Okay.
No, I'm going to take care of it. If you get a ticket, you just need to call Easy Park and let them know that you were here on municipal business and they will void the ticket.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Per Felix, remember.
Too many tickets.
Yeah, because I thought of it when I whipped in, I said, well, I'm on business, yeah. And then he stated it, so yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, not a problem. You good. Thanks for making us aware they writing us up out there.
Let us know if a tow truck shows up.
I know, well, I thought that's why I was watching, there was a tow truck cruising. But they didn't pull in.
Okay. So, is everybody cool with one of our staples, foundational blocks being centered around the equitable granting, hiring, contracting processes?
Could I add
Yes,
one? So I really liked the idea that both, I think Taylor and Joan mentioned, or anyway, I like the idea of having a kind of a simple, I think Tati said it too, kind of a simple tool that we can provide to organizations or other, assembly committees or others, that maybe just gives them kind of like 5 questions to ask to make sure that you're addressing equity as you're making this decision or you're developing this program or whatever you're doing. And I think it could be fairly simple, like I know that those things exist. But I think that could be a tool that we develop, and it would be under this priority that's on our work plan: build understanding and capacity for building equity within the committee, the assembly, the administration, the municipality.
Okay, I hear you. I'm gonna go to church on you now. Did you not hear my question? That's what I was in church.
Well, you asked if we're good with the equitable granting and hiring.
Well, as one staple, and I wanted to hear whether or not we were okay with putting that one on before we move to the next one.
So I would just say that it's in the category of policy change, right? So you're looking at changing policies or procedures within the city, and that would be one area that you want to focus on. Does that sound correct to you?
That's the question. Is this one area that we want to focus on for 2024 and prioritize?
And just clarify, when you say one area, what area are you referring to?
The area of, let me go back to granting, hiring, and contracting.
Yes.
The process.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that. But does that mean to the exclusion of doing the one?
No.
Okay.
I said one area
Yep.
that we're gonna target.
Well, you were specific about the grants you want, and that gets really focused, right?
Yeah, because that has been my experience. I have no experience with the other ones. I just have had the experience with the grant from the municipality.
Because that would allow us to be, we could learn about what that policy is specifically and understand how that's impacting the community and that it's not being done in an equitable way because of the process. And then we could change the policy so that it's a more equitable process. That would be a very concrete thing to work on.
Yeah, and thanks for delving into that specific aspect of it. And I was thinking in terms of if we kept that whole thing as one of our headliners, that would automatically be included in that. But I think when you're talking about resources and dollars being spent and who's getting those resources and who's getting those dollars as it relates to all of this, granting, hiring, contracting, who gets the contracts, are they being chosen in equitable ways for contracting processes, hiring processes, the whole 9 yards, and specifically that grant writing piece, that would all be a part of that window. And didn't want to, throw the other pieces out because that's dollars going into the community. Yeah.
So just for clarity, I've made it into a table the way that you described, and I'm putting as priorities for 2024 under the equitable granting, hiring, and contracting. I think there's 3 things so far. The one that Marie brought up around the election year and having input on selecting leadership and development programs. The one we talked about doing previously, which is a policy analysis to identify areas for increasing equity in granting, hiring, contracting, and then addressing grant requirements to ensure accessibility by all. So I think we could first get all these things out, and then we could go through and maybe even vote or figure out some way of deciding which we want to focus on. But do those 3 look right so far?
Sounds good. So let's go that way then. Somebody want to add something else to the pot?
I just wanted to share that what Thea brought up, I see as maybe two separate documents. One document being like making it accessible to be on committees, and the other one, the sheet for like when you're making decisions. And I mean, I would offer up what we have at ALP, but lots of people have asked me to help diversify their boards, committees, whatever. And I have a sheet of paper that I give. Are you ready? Do you have, are you prepared to work in this way? And I'd be happy to share. That's a 1-pager.
Okay.
It would be interesting to think about the Assembly's process for approving people who serve on commissions and who approve people who are appointed and that sort of thing, and if there was an equity lens that was used as part of that process.
Okay.
That's very interesting, because when I was in the Women's Committee, the new mayor got elected. He appointed 3 people and my term was over, so they just kicked me out and put 3 new people with just, hey, you're out. So I don't know how that process is. So I think it would be very interesting to understand it.
This is Heather. I was on commissions back in like 2008, 2009, and same thing when you turned out and weren't reappointed, they didn't really graciously thank you for your time and excuse you. But, so I would say it predates this administration, sadly.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. I worked for the city for 17 years, and something I've seen is that the boards and commission staff, there's none there. They have somebody in the beginning to staff boards and commission, but that's, I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, at least what I've seen from the other side is it becomes a low priority after a while, because then they just put whoever seems to be available to be in charge of staffing and looking through the applications. So maybe one influence we can have is how to send the message that we want to prioritize this. Have a dedicated staff person whose duties include staffing, performing the work of staffing, reviewing applications for the boards and commissions.
Okay.
One question. There's two things, and this is going to sound like I'm putting a damper on it, but one of the things I think we're doing right now, though, is we're going through every single one of these and thinking of things that we were going to do, which we're only a few down, and there's 20, 30 more to go. And so my question is that conversation we had earlier about focusing our attention into just a few things. There's no way we would be able to accomplish all those things as a committee. So that's one thing that I would say. And the other is that many of these conversations, like we just had about the granting process or I don't think we have the data to understand it. I think we have experiences. This has been my experience. But it would be interesting to have a review of who has received grants over the last 5 years, and to have an assessment of whether that is actually it is being done in what we consider to be an equitable way. The size of the organization, is it the same organizations that are getting it every single year, that sort of thing. So again, I don't know if we have good information to actually make a policy recommendation. We have some data because we have people's experiences who have gone through it. So that was just two things I would say. One is I don't know how we're going to focus.
Yeah.
And then the second is in some of these cases, it's not about doing it, but it's getting more information to understand it. Then that would help us to decide what this committee wants to.
Okay, a little slight pushback on that, and that is this. Relative to getting the information we need to function in one of these areas, we need to decide the area number one first, and then you double back to focusing in on areas and not trying to do it all at once, but yet you brought a new one in just a few minutes ago. So I'm saying if we're gonna get to these areas that we want to hone in for 2024. Then I think first of all, Thea was running the rabbit trail in a correct way. Let's get them all listed, and then we'll come back. Then we'll come back and see what we want to focus on.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Anything else we need to add to the list?
Are we just in A right now?
Yes.
Anything in A?
I would say at this particular point, from my vantage point, if you see, for the sake of time, if you see anything in here that we need to target anywhere in here, then we could go ahead and list it, and that way we wouldn't have to double back. Yes.
For my 2 cents, there is so much on here that is really wonderful. Because I'm a health administrator and I hammer season nail. When I'm looking at social determinants, I see section B, this basic needs, would have the most elevation of equity in our community. Helping to create accessibility and access is something that's going to be, Sisyphus up the hill, but I think if we could make strides, it would do a lot in the community.
Yeah, because under that, I was going to double back to Lori. You know, she said she's been beating the wagon, the horse, on language access for quite some time, and we brought up even digital access, which I think is a biggie, community-wise. And those are some things that could be added to the list as well, would you not say?
Maybe we just want to do a more general access. Language access is very specific to a small group within the community, but if there's room to still work on it, I mean, as what we've stated, that like we all can't bring our one special issue.
Okay.
So I mean, you know how important it is to me, but if it's the will of the body.
Yeah. So here's my thinking on that is once we decide on what 2, maybe 3, what areas we're gonna work on in 2024, there are times when hot button issues come up that we may need to direct some time to, and just keep that in mind. You know, if something comes up and it's it's of immediacy, you know, in the moment, and then we have to address, you know, then we might have to divert for a minute and then come back to whatever we're doing, so to speak.
And I do believe there is immediacy to the digital literacy access, because being released right now are large federal dollars and potentially large state dollars through our statewide digital equity plan. And we don't want the municipality to miss out on those dollars, or in ways we give those to the community, because it's all part of the big, what's the big federal plan?
And that was one reason I threw it out there.
Yeah.
It voiced full, yeah.
So we might, I mean, there's big money coming into the state in the next few months, is my understanding.
Yeah. So, all right, somebody have another one?
I'm sorry, just from a note taker point of view.
Okay.
So sorry, what was our 2024 priority around language access and digital access? Lori?
Make sure we keep it on the list.
So, but maybe just to be clear, so we asked for the language access audit last year, didn't really get results. Do we want to continue to push on that? Do we have another way we want to address it?
What was that, Polly?
So it sounds like it makes sense to leave it on the list, because potentially that's still forthcoming.
Okay.
And leave digital. I just think in particular that one is so critical. Topically, timely. Sometimes just encouraging people to do what they need to do to get the funding. Like, we've had to really encourage the state to keep working on plans and doing things so that the funding becomes available to us as a community. So we might want to pay attention. I don't know, on the municipal level, we could probably apply for funds.
Yeah, I kept wondering why he kept fibbing to us about when that process was gonna be complete. You know, we pressed him the last time and said, well, we'll have it in 2 months, I'm gonna do it myself to make sure we have it. And all that time has elapsed and we still didn't get it.
Well, I think we're gonna, so we just know everything's taking a lot longer right now, there's due to staffing and.
Yeah.
So one suggestion is under basic needs. So there are commissions and committees and other people working on access and inclusion for people with disabilities, housing and homelessness, health, public safety. Those are all like major efforts that other people are working on. We can stay connected to it, be aware of it. I'm not sure those are priorities for this committee. Because if that's true, then it's everything. So I think if maybe there's some things to remove, maybe there's something in there like stay in communication with these other efforts and be there as a resource and that sort of thing. But I don't think this committee is going to work on housing and homelessness or public safety or food and basic income or access and inclusion for people with disabilities. I don't know. I mean, I will be wrong about that, but those are like pretty big, broad things.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's more of the resources. If we can get out there the information and what type of grants is out there, so they're able to, and also how to write them, writing grants. I think that's the best information out there for the community. Resources is number one.
All righty, yes ma'am.
I'm not sure this has a place in this committee, but I wanted to call out, we listed last year food and basic income as part of that livable wages, and I just continue to think about the trouble receiving SNAP that a large portion of our state has, and if there's work being done to improve that, it doesn't seem like it, or maybe not impactful, and how that is an immediate basic need that needs to be addressed in our community.
Okay. And I guess that would go back, my question would go back to, as far as this committee is concerned, how would we be able to actually do that? Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
For the livable wages one, so I do think is a huge priority. It is for me anyway, and I do think it's something this committee could affect. We know, for example, through the whole debacle with the snow plowing, that one of the reasons why our snow plowing is not effective is because the wages that municipality pays just haven't really kept up, and they haven't really engaged with unions. They are doing it in some ways, but they haven't fully engaged with unions to really update their wage schedule. So it's also why we can't fill, health department positions, which has a huge impact on the things we're talking about. I mean, the Healthy and Equitable Communities funding that the state gave municipalities still has not been granted out, and the funding disappears May 2024. So all those grants have now been cut in half because there's no way to. It's a debacle. Like, it is directly impacting our community, and so I think we could start on livable wages. And I'm not saying that uni wages aren't livable. They're better than a lot of places, but we really need to. That's something we could do, is ask for a analysis of all of our wages. And actually we could do it alongside that analysis of demographics within each department and how it fits. And just dig in on that, around how do we actually get those up to a place where we can fill our positions and make sure that we have a diverse workforce in our municipality.
Okay, so we're specifically talking about with that question, muni wages.
Well, I don't think it has to be, but I'm saying that is something I think we could affect. And it's pretty impactful because it's a big workforce in the community.
And I'd like to go to.
So that all of those involved, that with the granting process, the hiring and contract, all of those speak to resources that go into our community. Yes.
And I'm not sure where this falls, but maybe in helping with wages, how do we add to it? And what I'm thinking about are city services, right? How I'd like to see data on who actually uses city services, because I bet you there's disproportionate use where you see a lot of our marginalized community with the prosecuting attorney's office or getting their vehicles not towed or picked up from towing versus the people who are trying to get building permits, right? So I want to see who's using that, especially the appraisals, property appraisals, because I don't understand what that means when I get my thing, and so I wonder, all the others too who barely speak English, do they know what they can appeal for their assessments? So, because that could be money that maybe they're giving out that is not necessary, but people don't necessarily know how to appeal that. So those, I don't know what other services, those are just the one that comes to mind. But when it comes to the building services, like to build houses, there's always talks of, let's streamline that process so these rich people can build the properties that they're gonna rent to us. Are we doing the same thing for our communities to streamline the process? Are we getting the same attention? So that's very broad, but I don't really know how to get that in our plan.
Yeah, so I guess going back to what I was saying a minute ago is that most of the big item tickets that we're speaking of today are centered around resources that go into the community. And so that in and of itself could be a focal point, resources that go into the community.
Just to piggyback on that, I think that'd be a great broad theme. I think also though the point that access being another broad theme, languages I put in here digital access, but also that can incorporate so much else that is basic needs, whether it's housing, food, stability, healthcare. So I think, resources, resource equity and access equity, even if that was our two focuses, with everything else that goes into that, it's a tall order for us to try and make progress on this year.
Agreed. That's a good theme.
And that's kind of what I was alluding to a minute ago, just making the topic of resources that go into the community and access, digital, whatever.
I think we're done. That's a pretty big.
Huh?
That's a big bit. I think that's a great theme.
It's pretty broad, but it covers what we have at heart, the resources that are going into the community, the access that we have community-wise. Two main areas, that would take up a lot, and anything that falls under that umbrella is what we can target for 2024.
Yeah, so you're following money and you're following the people.
Yeah.
Right? So where's the money going? Where is it not going?
Yeah.
And maybe pick something to start with.
Exactly.
And then what's happening with the people? Do they have access to the resources? And if not, why? And what kind of policy change could we make to improve access to X?
Yeah, and all of those come under that, and thanks for clarifying and pinpointing, but all of those come under that, and we have to deal with those under those issues, but we don't necessarily have to deal with that part of it today. We just get the issues out.
Okay,
great. Yeah.
So then as a kind of a litmus test on if we're going to be able to adhere to that, high order of work to get done in 24, for instance, if there is something brought to us about place naming or things like that, that wouldn't necessarily be a resource issue and it wouldn't necessarily be an access issue. Are we willing to throw something like that to the side? Because it is very, very worthwhile, but if we're saying, no, our focus are these areas because we think they're more critical to the community, we would potentially turn that down.
Well, as Steve was saying earlier, when we make a decision, we got to be disciplined about what it is we're going to target, but as I alluded to a minute ago, sometimes there are just some hot button topics that come that we may have to maybe take a 2 or 3 person committee to decide and say, look into this for us, or whatever,
Yeah, I appreciate that because I, among others, were involved in the place naming work, and that's long-term work, right? That's work that's going to, I think, shift narratives for decades, right? But it's not going to make a change this year or next year. And so I think that's a really good point, is that if we want to focus on resources and access, I think there's a higher potential there of seeing impacts. You know what I mean? So I think that may be something. Those are earlier wins than this sort of long-term work that's placed in.
Yeah, and it would increase the value of what we're doing in the community's eyes.
Yeah, and even if you went to that, see, when you talk about the community's eyes, one of the things that community would kick back on swiftly, and I know coming out of our community, is the naming in place kind of thing. It's a biggie, And so that's why I'm saying, if you get some hot button topics or something come up, we might have to throw a committee at it, of maybe 3 people, and say, hey, delve into this for us while we're still focused on whatever we're focused on. And so if something comes up that's a hot button topic to communities and people, then and there's an equity question involved in it, then we may have to take a brief look at it. Yeah, that's just me. That's what that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Yeah. But anything else above and beyond
I just
those?
have one thing.
Yes.
As Thea was going through her document, I see it references stuff related to the school district. And again, I don't work for the school district, but I'm kind of aware of some of the issues. But in 2024, they've got 3 big changes going on. They're changing the school start times, they're changing 6th grade into middle school, and then they're implementing this academy model starting with the next entering class of freshmen. And you know, I know the district has an equity officer. I don't know what the role of this committee is specifically regarding equity, but I do feel that there needs to, I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention, that there is a lot going on with the district, that there might need some advocacy around equity.
Thank you for that, Heather. And we did discourse in our last work session about interfacing in some shape, form, or fashion with the school board, school district, to a degree. But, you know, when I think about that even, I think in terms of, even though we may be able to do some of those things, I go back to our heading, our naming, and we are Anchorage Equity Committee of the Assembly. And so working outside of that framework, I would question the authority. Outside of that framework, I mean, we could form a citizens committee or something from this committee and deal with that. But we're actually, of the Assembly gives me pause.
Does the Assembly have any control over the funding of the school district?
Just the overall approval, we can't make any decisions.
Within. So as our power as this committee, we probably couldn't impact deeply decisions that are made in the district.
Advocacy only.
Advocacy only. Do we have any members here who serve on MECAT?
Sonia Hunt is a member.
Yeah. I mean, we could go out and raise some havoc, but, you know. Cool. Did I cut you off? Go ahead.
No, I just was sharing. We have a member.
I think it'd be admirable, but in terms of things that we can have a bigger effect on, making our primary focus some of these other areas I think would be more beneficial. Mm-hmm. If we could have better impact, it'd definitely be worth our time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You know, any of our, I would say go ahead from this angle, any of our organizations that we represent can impact the school district. You know, throwing some weight at the school district for things that we might see as an issue or what have you. But having our organizations, even if we did that in talking to our organizational heads and say, get your group behind us back, and then we all go, you know, and impact something at, say, a district meeting or something like that, trustee meeting or whatever, and to go at it from that angle versus the Anchorage Equity Committee of the Assembly's angle. Mm. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
It's a different topic, so if someone wants, it's not about the schools.
The only thing I would share is that I appreciate Heather bringing that up, because I've seen at Alaska Literacy Program that when the school changes their start time, when they're closed, when there ever have, whatever happens there has incredible impact on people being able to access our services, but potentially people who work for the municipality being able to keep up with their jobs and different things. It's been really a complicated year for our agency to figure out how to navigate amongst those changes.
Right, and just parents in general, it's been a problem.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a problem this next school year as well. And, you know, but the administration has been telling us, they seem to think that this in some shape, form, or fashion is going to work out better for educating our students. But it's causing such a discomfort in the daily lives of folk who have to get children to and from school and all of that kind of thing.
Well, and work schedules and our class schedule was built on the school district schedule. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's an issue. And there has been a whole lot of community voice thrown at that issue too, and to not really to any avail.
Now she put it down.
Who was that?
Panna.
Oh, okay. Panna, you still had a question?
I just had a comment to build upon Heather, and being one who has worked in the Anchorage School District since 94, 95. The closing the opportunity gap and create equitable opportunities in addressing access. Heather speaks truth to power. This will not happen going forward. There will continue to be incredible inequitable and gaps in opportunities for all of our children to receive free and public education. I just needed to put that out there.
All right. And, yes, ma'am.
I had one that, no, later at school. For the, just going back to the top, so addressing hate speech and making public testimony welcome for all. Again, just in the spirit of noting what we have done, we worked on we actually worked pretty hard on the resolution to address hate speech and participation in assembly meetings, but I think what we've already talked about today is some kind of user-friendly tools for the community to understand what's the process. And then it seems like, Laura, you brought this up on Thursday, there's more work to be done in terms of making assembly meetings welcoming, and I wonder whether that also could be a role that committee members play. For example, we could have kind of a rota where we each volunteer to attend an assembly meeting and be there to stand with people as they make testimony. So I would just suggest that as one of the things we might prioritize in 2024.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of my experience assembly meeting wise is you speak from the vantage point of the person making the testimony, and sometimes a lot of the havoc that we have in the meetings is a result of persons who are making the testimony and the kind of speech they use and the things that they're saying and who they're targeting and all of that, and the anger, the angst, and that they're utilizing when they're doing it versus just trying to make a point. You know, and it causes a lot of havoc. And unless you have some relationship, some knowledge of what's being presented, you know, with the person that's doing that, making the testimony, it's an issue. I'll just say that. It's an issue. Yeah.
Okay, this goes back to my early days or in the pandemic. In 2020, I was working for the assembly as a sort of side gig, and we created it's called Assembly 101, and it's videos about some of those things that people were talking about. So I'm gonna paste the link into the chat that has some of that basic information. But that was also the intent, was to build people's confidence going into a meeting, understanding the process.
Okay, thank you.
Also, the assembly meetings are a young person's game. And I'm in pajamas by 8:30 at night, and they're not even getting to testimony by the time I've been up since 5:30 in the morning.
I think there's more efficient ways of affecting change than testifying at a meeting sometimes.
Yeah.
I've seen them go till midnight.
Oh, yeah. I fall asleep listening to it on YouTube, and my husband's pulling the headphones out of my ears. I have better dreams than that.
Yeah.
Hats off to our assembly members.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to suggest, I've said this around a few times, but I mentioned it a few times, but the GAR, Government Alliance on Race and Equity, I'd like us to consider dedicating a meeting or a session to understanding these frameworks that others are using. And because if we don't use that, but it at least creates a very clear guide and set of tools for really addressing what we're hoping to address. And sometimes I feel like that we almost have to work backwards. We have to sort of imagine, what do we want for our community? What's the purpose of this committee? And then working backwards, what are the key things that we should be doing? And so and I'm just suggesting that maybe it would be helpful for us to, as a committee, either have someone teach us about this or review it ourselves or look at it. as a focused way for the committee to structure its work. So maybe just that's one of the, I would just say on the plan, let's set that as a goal, as to maybe have this committee do some learning around that.
What's the name of it again?
It's a GARE, Government Alliance on Race and Equity, and they have a relatively new document it's called Getting Results, and it lays out a really thoughtful plan specifically for municipalities like this in addressing equity, and so there's some really great things in there, and I think even if we didn't use this, it would really, I think, create some common language for us, so we're all using similar language in the work, and then it would, I think, maybe give us some ideas about how to approach things like language access or things like the distribution of funds or that sort of thing. It would give us a little bit of structure.
And so we have looked at this, but I think we haven't really followed it. So we have brought this to the committee, I think like the beginning of 2023 maybe. And there is,
So where can we get this information that was in 2020, for example?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so a lot of it is on our website. If there were attachments to a meeting, they're, I think, on the website.
Yeah, how long do they stay on?
Yeah. Yeah, and the recordings are there, but we do have a problem with our meeting notes right now, because that's kind of not happening. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, you were saying together that this is a document that was.
We've looked at this together, yeah, and I think it's, to me, this is a really good process once we know what our priorities are, that then we could kind of put one of these plans together for each of those priorities.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. If one of our priorities is to do some learning around it, I'll just say that might be if we can commit.
Yeah, it's a great tool. Yeah, and we can go to their conference, which is happening this fall, which would be awesome.
Yeah, it's funding, huh? Yeah, my thinking on that is, and I'll take you back to church again. You have not because you asked not. But anyway, I think we're deciding, or attempting to decide on the areas of focus for 2024. And we paused around resources and in a couple of areas, in all of the granting, contracting, hiring area and anything that's related to that, and then the access area, be it language or digital and things that are related to that. Those are two biggies that we opened up. And there were a number of other things mentioned as well. And where's that list again?
It's right here.
Yeah. Which one of these sides is the?
So the way it's.
Go ahead, you take it.
The way it's, I'll just orient it. So the way I've just been trying to turn it into a table, like we talked about at the beginning. So the first column is what we have on our 2022 sheet. 2023 sheet. So embedding equity. So in that first column, we've got all the things from our current plan. And then I was just jotting down progress in 2023 in the middle column. And then on the right-hand side, the things people are sharing around priorities for 2024. So there's the first one around embedding equity in municipal plans, processes, and resources. Then the second one is meeting basic needs, so that's for the language access and livable wage. And I feel like I might have missed what you were saying about healthcare, so maybe we can come back to that. And then the last one is equitable education opportunities, so that's where I put Heather's one right there. So I'm just plugging them in where it seems like they should go.
Okay, so, did you mentioned somebody said something about healthcare?
So two that I feel like I missed. Tom, I think something about access to healthcare, and Marie, when you were talking about assessments, and I just didn't catch that one. So maybe we could make sure we got both of those.
Yeah, my comment was just that I see a lot of value in the whole of section B about meeting basic needs. The theme of that section to me really seems access. So my comment about healthcare was just that that whole section is comprehensive enough to incorporate work that we might want to do this year to increase health equity within our community.
Okay. Speaking of the neighborhood health center, that's under the auspices of the municipality. Is it not? No, it's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Lisa Aquino is on our committee. She hasn't been super present, but
okay.
Yeah, she's.
It's a private nonprofit, FQHC.
Okay.
And I would just second that. I think, you know, if as we're trying to narrow things down, the potential benefit about looking at equity specifically in healthcare, as opposed to like education, where we don't have the same kind of role with the school district. You know, the assembly and administration obviously has a direct role in public health and our Department of Health, and it's probably one of the most under-resourced departments we have. It's probably one of the areas where if some specific energy went into some changes there, you could probably see changes within a year or less. So that may be some low-hanging fruit for this committee to think about, getting more data to understand where the access problems are and where the resource problems are and how it's affecting our community, and what this committee could try to do to rectify some of that. That may be a positive place to start.
I'll just say, if the committee decided that was a priority, I would like put a ton of time into that. And I would have a subcommittee, if anyone who wanted to put extra time into it, and we could, because there is, I didn't know this, there's actually a health clinic in that building, and there's every program that relates to all these. There's childcare, there's Aging and Disability Resource Center for seniors and people with disabilities.
Childcare licensing.
There's WIC, there's SNAP, there's so much potential in the Anchorage Health Department building. There's housing and homelessness. It's all in that building, all. Sadly, that's where the grant requirements are that are so hard to understand. That's where the early childhood, that's where a lot of the alcohol tax fund comes from. So it's like all the things I care about are all happening in that building, but they're not happening because there's no staff, and the whole thing is, there's no strategy.
I fully agree, and that bridges every community within the municipality. They're all affected by that. And Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The better we can fulfill that, the better the community's set up to be able to advocate for themselves and participate in education, participate in the other areas of community life.
Great.
So, sound like we've got a new priority area.
That's why it's so hard.
Yeah. I'm not sure that we do necessarily, though, because when we were talking about how funds get distributed, it is from that. And that would be, I mean, Thea knows the work that we do in public health. That's one of the strongest things that we've taken on since COVID. I love that idea.
Yeah. It's a little different, but if we want to prioritize it, that's what we're deciding.
Right, like an example, so when we go through the budget process and the mayor delivers a budget and the assembly goes through their entire process of making changes to that. This committee hasn't necessarily had a strong role in that process. And so if prior to the budget process, this committee delved into some of the areas of inequity, specifically if you wanted to in the health department, and identified some potential strategies and then brought forward some ideas about putting additional resources into those or changing those in some way, that could be a very tangible, set of actions for the committee to, because I think what we continue to hear, all the departments are fighting over money, right? The police department, the fire department, the health department, all of these things. But the reason why resources go to one of those departments or new funding comes often is because someone's advocating for it, right? The police chief comes and shows the cars that they have to drive and how old they are and how much they're in need, and goes through the process of advocating for that, and then gets the votes to be able to put millions of dollars in the budget in order to buy cars, right? So that's all about, I think, advocacy and going through the process and to do that. So if there's a specific area, for instance, in the Department of Health, that this committee wanted to get involved in because they saw specific inequities, like this is impacting our community in this way. I don't know. So that's just an example of that process that we want to focus on.
Yeah, I think communication is key, and the more we communicate and run the rabbit trails, it synchronizes our focus. And so that sounds like a biggie for everybody. And so yeah. And this
I love this priority area, and I'm all in on health, and I keep thinking about all the things that feed into access to healthcare as well. And I'm really caught up on transportation in particular, and that if you cannot get to a health center, regardless of if you want to go to one, the ways in which our most vulnerable populations utilize and our transportation resources in the community and are unable to, and we don't have good services for them, I guess, at the end of the day, in order to access healthcare and maintain healthcare. And then, like, not to keep harping on snow plowing, but the communities that aren't snow plowed and people are walking through 3 feet of snow are those marginalized communities that need the bus and that need to walk places. And all feeds into health, which is why I'm all in on it.
Yeah, get into health, get into work, get the whole 9 yards. Yeah. All righty. So, it's synchronized. We've got time-wise, got a minute to.
Could we please hear from Marie again, so I can make sure I capture what you were saying earlier?
Oh, I think Cameron probably encapsulated it well as far as kind of finding out where community resources are and going into the departments and seeing maybe the inequities in that, like how much are going to the permit department versus property appraisal, who's using those services and how much are we putting in that. And kind of with the budget too, it's like, I wonder what percentage of the budget is AHD, so looking into that and going from there.
Okay, so the whole community budget, basically.
The budgeting process sounds like,
With, I guess, the goal of increasing budget and resources to those that affect our communities but are not being used.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and for me to speak to that, and I mean this in a very positive way, but it's a human process, right? It sounds technical, but it's human, right? And so what gets brought forward, what gets advocated, what gets pushed forward, it is very much someone gets in the ear of me or Felix or Anna Brawley or somebody and says, and they all of a sudden, it becomes really important to them. And then they talk to their colleagues about it and say, hey, I really need your support on this. This is, and someone else says, we can't afford it. And yet they say, well, no, we can't not afford it. We have to do it. It's really, this is the process. And so I think that, again, having a committee like this that has so many community representatives behind it could have a tremendous amount of power in advocating for resources being allocated to something. And I think it would be a compelling case, at least to me, and I'm sure some of my colleagues, if this committee came forward and said, here's what we're seeing. We're seeing this happen, and we want to be a part of changing that. So that budget process is certainly one. And the other one is just throughout the entire year, again, policy should change. Because if we saw the data and we saw something where this policy is actually really creating this problem, then we could delve into learning more about that policy and what we could do to change that. So. But I just don't want to underestimate, you guys talked about power, that ultimately these things happen because you've convinced the assembly to vote for it. That's really oftentimes when those resources shift from one pot to another.
Okay. Oh, and all of that is good and interesting, and but I say this to the person, and it's kind of facetious, but the person who says, look at a couple of things, focus on that, and then you just keep giving us these
Oh, good.
Okay, so focusing in, honing in.
How about I give a rundown of the
Okay, let's do
2024
that.
priorities
Let's do
that I've gotten here so far. So within that first body of work, embedding equity in municipal plans, processes, and resources. Under address hate speech and make public testimony welcoming for all, share tools to help community members make testimony. I love assembly meetings and understand the process, and it sounds like there's the video series that Heather created, so we don't have to make the tools, it's maybe just sharing it, and maybe there's a language access element to that, I don't know. And then consider providing support from committee members, support from committee members to people who want to make testimony. So that's the first one. Under optimize the role of the chief equity officer, this came from our discussion this morning, bring the committee's 2024 agenda to the administration and identify the role for the chief equity officer to implement the agenda. Under equitable granting, hiring, and contracting processes, because it's an election year, let's have input on, at the time of transition on selecting leadership for departments, membership on boards and commissions, and development of priorities and programs with the next administration. Next one, complete an analysis of procurement policies. That's something we started this year to identify areas for increased equity in granting, hiring, and contracting. Next one, review and make recommendations of grant requirements to ensure accessibility by all community organizations. Request an analysis of grant fund allocations for the past 5 years to understand who's received funding. Next one is increase support for community organizations to apply for grant funding, getting at the grant writing piece. And last one under that heading, analyzing municipal budget and allocations among departments to make strong recommendations to ensure equitable resource allocation across departments and programs. Then, so far we don't have any 2024 priorities. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, where's the health piece?
It's coming.
Oh.
So far nothing under these folded ones. I made some notes of things we did this year. Then under build understanding and capacity for building equity within this committee, the assembly, the administration, municipality, came up with 3 things so far. Provide or be a resource, or sorry, I can work on my words here a little bit. Basically provide a resource to boards and commissions for appointing and identifying community members from diverse communities. That was Lori's tool that she already has. Create a tool where it's kind of like asking 5 questions. Have you done these 5 things for building equity in every decision? And then use the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, which is the GEAR tools, to build knowledge and understanding amongst our committee members. So then under meeting basic needs, under language access and digital access, continue to press for the language access audit for all municipal programs and continue to support support funding for digital access. Under access to healthcare, this is the health department one, analyze Anchorage Health Department budget and allocations within the department and make strong recommendations to effectively leverage HD resources to build health equity. And I don't have any specific ones. For food and basic income, kind of same, it's part of the HD one. Under livable wages, request an analysis of wage rates for all municipal departments, along with demographics of the workforce of each department compared to the community. Identify wage rates that need to be raised and departments that need to increase diversity in workforce. Advocate for strategic wage increases and diversity in hiring. And then under this last one, equitable education and opportunities. As the Anchorage School District changes policies on school start times, the academy model, provide advocacy to ensure equity as those policies are implemented.
Yeah, can I add to that one?
Yeah.
Advocacy around, I would just throw in budget cuts too.
Around what?
Budget cuts, school closures, etc.
Did I miss anybody's
Because I would say both adequate funding and as they make cuts, that those cuts are equitable.
That's more what I was thinking.
Okay, sorry.
I'd love it if they weren't making cuts.
Changes policies on school start times, academy model, and budget cuts. Or
Yeah.
Is this okay? Or-
That looks perfect.
Did I miss any?
Yes, the wrong person. We've got a smorgasbord there.
So right now we have,
So my question would be, is how many of these we could effectively put under the umbrella of those two areas of resources that go out.
oh yeah, correct, that was the theme.
Versus,
Resource equity and access.
yeah, versus that, and we talked about the other one, which was access in general, language, digital, and what have you. How many of these would fit under those categories that we've targeted? That we could effectively put into those categories?
Can I make a suggestion? What if we just to try and see if there is kind of, more support for one of these than others? What about we go down this 2024 column and just say everybody gets 3 votes, you can vote on 3 of them, and just do like, just take a quick vote and see if there might be 1 or 2 that are like really rising to the top, and then we maybe can prioritize those. Or maybe there isn't, maybe we're all over the place and then we'll have to figure it out from there. What do you think of that, Pastor?
Okay, which 3 we're speaking of?
Oh, I'm just saying, if each committee member has 3 votes, and you walk us down this list, and we each get to vote no more than 3 times. So if I love this first one, I'm gonna vote on that. And I can tally that up. And then we can just see, are there 2 or 3 of these that we're already have more support for?
So what I guess what I'm asking is, are we looking at, under priorities for 2024, those 3 columns versus everything that's above it?
Like the stuff we talked about this morning?
Yeah, like all of the stuff that you had in those columns earlier.
Were you saying that we're choosing the header, or we're choosing 3 of the little
Oh,
sub-
sorry, I mean
subgroups?
3 of the sub things. Yeah,
3 actions, kind of.
yeah, these things. That's good.
Under each.
Yeah, well, I see that, I understood that, but I'm talking about the things that were up above, way on up there.
Oh.
That we talked about this morning.
That we talked about in those other categories, be it this morning or this afternoon.
I think
Part of it,
I think I have it. I know it's hard to see because I've like changed everything, but so for each of these 3 kind of buckets, I think I've captured at least what we've talked about this afternoon.
So you had priorities for 2024, but didn't you have that under each one of those?
Yeah, so like this is
And so that's what I'm referring to, that all of those make up priorities for 2024, regardless of what category it's in.
yes, but do we want to choose 3 of those is what I'm asking. And so I'm saying if we did want to just narrow everything in that column to 3 priorities.
Right, top down
Yes.
is what I'm asking.
Yes, we could vote on that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, just to see if there's some that have more support than others.
I'd also like to throw out that like we talked a lot about the health department and maybe we pick the topics we want to focus on, but we pick it amongst like maybe 2024 we focus on Anchorage Health Department. And then like in 2025 we might focus on a different department like the police department, because we're biting off all, like when you look at this is overwhelming and I wouldn't know where to start. So I'm just putting that out there that we say like embedding equity in municipal plans, processes, and resources to meet basic needs and equitable opportunities. In 2024, our focus area will be the Anchorage Health Department, in which we'll look at these things. I'm just throwing that out there because then that gives us a much more narrow focus.
Right, and then see, that's what I'm alluding to, because the priorities go all the way up to the top. right? And each one of these numbers, 1, 2, 3, or 3, 8, or what, 4, 5, or whatever.
No, it's just this,
part of it.
it's just this part,
Thanks.
just these things.
Starting with number 3.
I kind of just turned this list into a table. Because remember when Cameron said that earlier, I was like, oh, I can do that right now. So it's just the things under 3.
Yeah.
Okay, things under 3,
Yes.
but it goes all the way through
3.
C to 2.
Yep, yes, exactly. So 3A, B, and C. Yes.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but
Yeah, and
there
that's
was a
all in
whole,
here.
there was a whole list of things all through there.
I
And
think those are in progress in 2023 or number 1. So she just
This is Heather. I'm having a hard time following in terms of being able to vote on each of those things since they're not all on one page.
that's
And
what
I'm
I'm
just
talking about.
wondering, with 5 minutes left, would it be better to potentially do, like an emailed poll to everyone, and then maybe you would get even more input? Like, we worked hard to create a solid list, and then for a bigger group to vote to say what the priorities are. Just an idea, but I don't know that I can vote because I can't really see everything to know what to prioritize.
Yeah, and see, my, that's good, but I was gonna suggest another option if everybody's available to it, that before our time hits, that we see if we wanna do 15 minutes and conclude in another 15 minutes instead of 2 o'clock. Huh?
I'm just saying I'm fine with that too.
Yeah.
But I also think we can do it by email and come back to this at our next meeting too, so.
Right, and also, those that are not here, if we sent an email out saying the committee reviewed these areas, and we'd like everyone to email back their top 3 priorities in these areas, that may also get a few more voices.
Yeah, I'm good with that too. That sounds really well. And when you mention folk who are not here and that kind of thing, then that opens up a whole nother window to, well, I didn't get to add my 10 cents into all of this. And so I don't see this on the list, and, blah, 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 blah.
Through the email, you could say, here, we prioritize these top ones, we want people to kind of vote. If there's something that's really important to you that's missing, let us know, but I think that the email would be an efficient way to narrow. Or maybe.
Or a way Google.
Well, can we do this? What was that?
I said like a weighted Google poll, so people can do their first priority, second priority, third priority, and then you assign points to each. And
Does that mean you're volunteering to set that up? Heather? Sounds awesome.
if you email this stuff to me that I can read, not off the table, I'd be happy to set that up.
That's awesome.
And my other recommend, and it probably was alluded to a second ago, but my other recommend would be that our February meeting would consist of concluding this business.
Oh, that's right. Well, and some of these are big and some are small. So I think that that's partly this as well, is that, bringing your concerns and your agenda to the administration is a single meeting. Right, I mean that's not work that would happen throughout the whole year, and other of these boxes it's a lot of work that would happen over the year. So I think that's part of the calculation as well. But it would be helpful to know what's important to each person. So.
And so we could get that input by email, and then in our February meeting, we make the conclusion. For our year. Sound like a plan?
Sounds like a plan.
All righty then, it's 2 o'clock, and we can conclude with that plan and move forward to our February meeting and bring a conclusion to our plan for 24.